All right, we are live on YouTube.
I'll call the roll. Laura Devlin,
Present.
Robert Dorinzo, Elaine DeRisso, Nadine Heights,
Yes,
Ed
present.
DeVoe,
Here.
Ed LeBlanc.
Here.
You have a quorum. We'll stand for the pledge.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So any deletions, reordering?
No, there are no additions, deletions, or reordering.
Do we have approval of the minutes from January 10th, 2024 and February 14th, 2024?
Make a motion to approve the minutes of January 10th, 2024 and February 14th, 2024.
Second.
Okay, we can move to swearing in of the staff and applicants.
Need to take the vote. We need to vote.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
So, yes, so we approve the minutes.
we have to vote.
All
All,
Okay, all those in favor?
aye.
Okay.
I need a testimony this evening. Please stand and raise your right hand.
Oh,
Have
we
you been
should-
public comment? No, to sworn in. Also, that you testimony.
7:30 dinner date.
Do you swear to affirm the testimony you give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So say yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, we can move on to proof of publication. For first, 927 South Palmway.
Yes, and the proof of publication was provided in your packet.
Okay, and for the other two as well, 804 Lake Avenue and 403 South Ocean Breeze?
Correct.
Okay, Great.
As well as the ordinance item number D or letter D.
okay, so everyone has that? Goes in their package. Are there any withdrawals or postponements?
There are not.
Okay. Do we want to give a moment for Elaine to be recognized?
Catch your breath.
Thank you. All right.
It's great.
Can we move to the public hearings? Any disclosures there? No.
So that's board disclosures. If there's any,
No. Any disclosures? No
No,
disclosures
Uh,
on anything? No.
I had a neighbor approach me about, I think he might be here tonight, but we never discussed this. We never discussed his application or his needs. So therefore, that's it. I have nothing to add.
Mike is on it.
It's
It's
on.
on, but it's maybe just,
I had a neighbor to approach me. And we never discussed his needs or his matter and what his situation were. But I think that's important to know. I have nothing more to add to what I've said.
okay. Any unfinished business?
nope, we'll just have new business tonight.
Okay, and then we have new business. So we'll begin with HRPB project number 24-006-00001. Consideration of an alcoholic beverage distance waiver to allow non-packaged sales of wine for on-site consumption at V Gallery at 804 Lake Avenue. Do you want to continue that, Annie?
Awesome. So like our chair said, this is an alcoholic beverage distance waiver at 804 Lake Avenue. So this is right downtown. This property is It's 804 Lake Avenue, but it does share a parcel with 802, which is on the corner there. All right, so the proposal, like I said, alcoholic beverage distance waiver to allow non-packaged sales of wine. So that's going to be wine by the glass in this case. So V Gallery is an existing art gallery at 804 Lake Avenue. This is an older photo of the building, but you can see it pretty clearly here. It's the purple part of the building, not the blue part. So part of this business model includes sale of wine by the glass while their customers browse the available artwork or attend events at the gallery. The city's regulations about alcoholic beverages and alcoholic beverage establishments require a 500-foot separation from other establishments that are selling alcohol, as well as protected land uses like churches, schools, parks, libraries. So because this is the primary downtown area, there are many establishments within 500 feet that have license to sell alcohol. So in these situations, the city's code allows for a distance waiver to be requested. So that's just a quick floor plan of, what the uses within the building are going to be. You can see art walls where the wine will be sold at the bar there, some storage, some art studios. So in your packet, we went through all of these standards for the review and decision that are outlined in the code. So within 500 feet, like we said, lots of other businesses that sell alcohol. The DT, which is downtown, and MUE, which is the mixed use east zoning districts, are also within 500 feet of the proposed use, and both do allow for residential uses. So the proposed wine sales for number 2, it is going to be an accessory use to the gallery. And staff has added a condition of approval that the applicant will submit their development order from this meeting to the city business license staff to reflect this approval of the alcohol sales. If the board does move to approve this. For number 3, the property is a contributing resource to the Old Town National and Local Historic District, which is why it's in front of you all tonight. But no exterior alterations are proposed at this time, so there's no COA happening here. And for number 4, the waiver would be necessary to allow wine sales at the gallery. Staff has added several of our standard conditions of approval so that the business operates within the allowed hours of sale, to ensure that the use isn't detrimental to the health, safety, and welfare of the community, etc. So we recommend that you all review this information, determine whether or not you feel the waiver is appropriate to allow the sale of wine here. If you do move to approve it, we've got those 3 conditions that we talked about. And those are your draft motions. The applicant is here as well if you would like to ask them any questions or anything.
Can I ask a question? Why does this come before this? Not on? Okay, sorry. Why does this come before this board if it has nothing to do with what the building looks like?
Sure. So as the HRPB, you serve as both the Historic Design Review Board and the Planning and Zoning Board for properties within our historic district. So typically, if you weren't in a historic district, this would go to the Planning and Zoning Board, but because they are in a historic district, you all serve as their PCB.
So the waiver is just because it's within 500 feet of another establishment that also sells wine, or?
Yes, yeah, within 500 feet of another establishment, or similarly, if someone wanted to sell alcohol within 500 feet of a church, that's not the case here, but that would be another situation where something like this would come before you.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions for the applicant? I believe you said was
Yes.
here.
Is the applicant here? Could they come up to the podium? Good evening.
Good evening.
I have 2 questions. One is, how would you see that serving wine would improve the nature of your business? And number 2, there are establishments that sell alcohol on either side of you. What is the capacity of your staff or your folks that work at the gallery to assess people for intoxication? Say, for instance, somebody's intoxicated, comes from the establishment next door, and they come into your gallery and they're intoxicated. Is there training that your staff has gotten to be able to ascertain that and then make a decision about whether or not sales are going to be happening?
Actually, I'll be the only one attending the bar. It's actually more of we're trying to get people to stay in the gallery longer. If you offer them a glass of wine, they tend to linger longer in a gallery, which is a potential sale of art. That's really the only reason. Janet?
And the second question, in terms of how you could ascertain if somebody is intoxicated and then make a decision about selling them a glass of
I've
wine?
been tending bar for 35 years. Pretty good at figuring out who has had too much. And I'm in.
And you've had the requisite trainings to be able to make
Yes.
that determination. Okay, thank you.
Okay, are we ready to make a decision on this? Ready to take a vote on this?
Make sure you call for public comment as well.
Oh, yes. Are there any public comments? I think you said there were none in the beginning.
I have no public comment
Oh.
submitted for this item.
Okay.
All right, if there's no one here to make a public comment, then you could,
Now we can take a vote. Okay. Yeah.
I move to approve HRPB project number 24-006-0000001 for an alcoholic beverage distance waiver to allow non-packaged sales of wine for on-site consumption at Eve Gallery at 804 Lake Avenue, based upon the competent substantial evidence in the staff report and pursuant to the city of Lake Worth Beach land development review.
I'll second.
Okay, so we have approval for that then? And we have to vote again? All right. You're gonna? Yeah? Yes? Okay,
To confirm, before you finalize the vote, that the motion includes the conditions as conditioned. All right, and the seconder agrees?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, contingent upon the conditions.
okay, great. Then we have approval. Okay, okay, do you need to know how many voted yes? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, got it. Okay, we can move on to item number B, HRPB project number 23-001-00248. Consideration of a certificate of appropriateness for an addition on the northwest corner of the existing principal structure, phase 1, and demolition of the existing garage to build a new 2-story accessory structure, phase 2, at 403 South Ocean Breeze.
all right. So as always, we'll start with the location. So this is just south of that intersection of 4th Avenue South and South Ocean Breeze. This is in the MF20 zoning district. So we've got kind of a lot of pieces to this. So we're going to start with, these are the existing structures. The one on the left, that is the existing duplex, the primary structure. So that was built circa 1925 in the bungalow style. It was converted from a single family house to a duplex sometime between the 50s and 70s. You can see some of the character defining features. We've got exterior stucco walls, jerkin head gable roof shape, 4/1 windows. We've got exposed rafter tails and decorative brackets, and some tapered front porch columns. The existing garage, which you can see on the right, was built circa 1956. That's a masonry construction. And so while the primary structure has been designated as a contributing resource in the South Palm Park Historic District, the accessory structure was designated as non-contributing. So we're going to start off with the accessory structure and that demolition. So staff reviewed the decision-making criteria for demolitions. We've got those full responses in your staff report that you got last week. So like I said, the structure is non-contributing in the South Palm Park Historic District. In that 2020 resurvey that we talk about sometimes, it was recommended to remain non-contributing. It's unlikely to qualify as an individual landmark on the National Register. There are other remaining and better examples of mid-century accessory structures throughout the city's historic districts. And this particular one does not have any distinctive features or connections to local history or culture that would provide some sort of exemplary opportunity for, citizens to study or be connected with local history and design. So staff do contend that this would meet the requirements for a demolition. So should you move to approve the demolition, here's their proposed site plan. You can see the new accessory building kind of in that top left corner. So that would be a guest house and carport. And then you can see the proposed addition to the back of the house there as well. So zoning wise, the addition and new accessory structure are in compliance with most of the LDRs with the exception of the parking. So I am going to go back to our site plan just so that we can kind of all look at it while I describe this. So the parking access from the alley throughout the city, there is a requirement that parking off the alley has to have an additional 20-foot back out. We don't want people crashing into their neighbor's back fence because they're trying to get out of their parking spot. So that 20-foot back out, 10 feet of that is accounted for by the alley itself, and 10 feet of that has to be provided on site. So while a normal parking space has to be 18 feet in depth, an alley parking space needs to be 28 feet in depth. What we've got on the site plan is close. They're about 3 feet short. So at permit, they would need to amend their site plan to reflect those additional 3 feet of the required back out. Parking also does have to be on an improved surface. So this parking spot back here, as best we can tell, is proposed to be on grass. So they would also have to amend at permit to provide pavers, concrete, gravel, some sort of improved surface for that car to go on. So those are both conditioned already in your staff reports, but we just wanted to point those two zoning elements out. So we do always ask that applicants provide a proposed streetscape so that you all can get a sense of how it will fit into the neighborhood, how it will compare to other existing structures and that existing fabric. So you can see here, unfortunately, they did not include the structure directly north of 403 South Ocean Breeze, but it is another 2-story structure. So you can see here that they, are contending that it's very much in compliance with other existing 2-story structures right there on the street. And down below is just kind of a zoom in on this property itself. So you can see how the front structure relates to the proposed accessory structure. All right, so then we're just going to be moving through the proposed elevations and floor plans really quick. So this is the proposed accessory structure. Apologize that our Zoom makes it a little tough to see all of this sometimes. But you can see it is 2 stories. We've got that incorporated carport. And then we will, let's see if it lets me move on. There we go. So you can see on the first floor, we've got about half of it's taken up by that carport. And then we've got the guest house living room and kitchenette, and then a couple bedrooms up top. And then here we've got some elevations for the proposed addition. You can see that a little bit of it, peeks out or is offset from the existing structure, partially as a way to differentiate it from the historic fabric. And then you can see it on the sides as well. So on this north elevation, it's here, and on the south elevation, it's here on the left side. And there you can see the floor plan. So this addition is really, adding a master suite. So bedroom, bathroom, closet, and a bit of a covered patio as well. So we always have to do our historic preservation analysis using the design guidelines and our historic preservation ordinance. So staff does contend that the accessory structure uses elements of the bungalow style successfully, and that it's compatible in height and massing to both the existing structure and surrounding neighborhood. The wall finish, the roofing, the windows, all of those are very compatible with the design or with the architectural style and the existing structure. And they do find ways to differentiate it through not only the height, but also some smaller details like horizontal stucco banding or columns that match the addition rather than the primary structure. I would say this is a case where they did really work to match the existing structure quite closely and have just smaller details of differentiation. We do see, I would say, a bit of variation between how applicants choose to differentiate. The addition, again, similar compatibility in height, massing, those exterior finishes, roofing, windows. So their differentiation for the addition really primarily comes from that being offset from the original structure setbacks, differentiating it while still having it to the back to minimize the visual intrusion. And they did choose a couple of different door and column styles from the primary structure to continue that differentiation. So staff does find that the proposed new structure and addition are consistent with our LDRs and the design guidelines, again, with that exception of those parking bits. And we do find that the proposed accessory structure demolition meets the required criteria. So we are recommending approval with conditions. We do have 3 slides of our conditions. So we broke them out into phase 1, which is that addition project, and phase 2, which is the accessory structure. And we've got our draft motions as always. I am not sure if the applicant is here tonight. I didn't see them. But if you've got any questions for us, as always.
Do we have
any public comments?
I've not received any.
Any questions?
Annie, this isn't overbuilt in a lot. It looks like, especially since you're gonna have them put paved, Shoots, I'm sorry. This isn't overbuilt for the lot, and since you're gonna have them put pavers, that's taking even more green space away.
So we did, we do always double check the zoning. So because this is in that MF20 district, they do have a bit more to play with than like a single family zoning district would have. So by what we can tell, what we've been provided, they're meeting all of those standards. We did even estimate with those required adjustments to the rear parking spaces, they would still be well within their impermeable surface coverage allowance. If we were to run into any of those when we did our full zoning review at permit, we would either address those there, or if major changes had to be made to address, zoning nonconformities that came up, it would be brought back to you.
Thank you.
I have a question. Is this on?
There you go.
Okay, there we go. A lot of times we see people and they are allowed to include parking spaces that are on the street. Is this not the case here?
So in this case, so because it's an existing duplex, they're required to have a total of 3 off-street parking spaces. Right now, they only have the one, that garage space. So there are 2 spaces that they're proposing would decrease the nonconformity. And using that one on-street space, because the on-street spaces are only allowed to be up to 50% of the required off-street spaces, they'd only be able to count 1. So they very much could count that 1 and come into full compliance, but they couldn't just have 1 on site and 2 off.
Could we see the plans again?
The site plan, floor plans.
I think the floor plan.
All right, so these are the first and second floor plans for the accessory structure.
Okay, so are we going, I'm not missing something. We're going outside to go upstairs, right?
Correct. Yes, the stair is outside. Here, yeah, you can see that stairway here on the east elevation.
So is it 1 unit though, then? It's 1 unit that's broken up into 2.
It would be 1 guest house. So this is not going to be a legal accessory dwelling unit. And it is conditioned as such. That's part of the reason why they don't have, a stove in the kitchen. So this will serve only as a guest house. But yes, they would have to, under these plans, they'd have to go outside to come from the living room to their bedroom.
So the guest house is the one on the left, right? No. Yeah,
These are
That's-
both the guest house.
both of them, right? Okay, because they're both called a guest house. But one is an addition to the existing house?
Sorry, yes, so this is the guest house. And then, so if we go back to the site plan, so we've got the guest house here, that's 2 stories. We were
Oh,
looking at the bottom and. at the
oh,
bottom,
okay. So
over
that's a
there.
2-story guest house, freestanding,
Correct.
Gotcha.
And then the 1-story addition is. where that
1-story
new
addition.
construction is.
Okay. So if you go back to the 2-story addition, that's the 2-story there.
Correct.
Okay, okay.
So that means it can't be a income producing,
Correct.
okay.
Is there any anticipated impact on neighbors for the demolition part of the project?
Not that staff is aware of and not that any neighbors have brought to our attention.
And have you gone over the conditions with the applicant?
We have provided them, the staff report. We've not had any questions from them about the conditions, but we've been in contact with them.
So to your knowledge, they have no objections to the conditions as laid forth here?
To our knowledge, correct. Yes.
Do we have a motion or is there any other questions?
Yeah, and follow up to Elaine's question, what is the green space going to be looking like? Because I know it's talks about planting trees and things of that nature is one of the conditions.
So those conditions are, I would say standard conditions. We weren't provided with any sort of landscape plan, but they would need to provide that at permit. If they are proposing to remove any trees, they'll have to follow the mitigation in the landscape code. But we weren't provided with any sort of plans to really do an analysis on that.
Do you know what the trees are there now? Or the show in the site plan?
They did not show the trees on the site plan. I know that there are some trees throughout the property, but it wasn't clear which, if any, would need to be removed to do the new construction or the addition.
Okay, thank you.
Looks actually like a very charming design.
Albeit having to go outside to go to the bedroom.
No, I mean, it just looks like it will fit nicely with the neighborhood.
Is that unusual to have to leave one part of the building to go upstairs?
I guess there's no way to do a staircase from inside. Is that why?
I can say it's not something we specifically discussed with the applicant or their architect. I think since I've been here for about a year and a half, I can think of maybe one other guest house or pool house that's done something similar. But yeah, I don't.
There's no rule against it.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
if they're not renting it, why do we care?
Guess if they want to use.
I mean,
it.
why do we care? Really? I looked at a house that had that. I thought it was.
They're probably trying to maximize the space inside. As soon as you put a stairwell inside, you're gonna lose, like, there's not hardly any space there anyway,
Right, the
so.
alternative is to build out, which they can't do. They have to
Right,
build up.
right,
Right.
yeah.
I'm ready to vote.
Motion? I'll do a motion.
Please do.
Okay. I move to approve HRPB project number 23-001-00248 for a certificate of appropriateness, COA, for an addition to the existing primary structure, demolition of the existing accessory structure, and construction of a new accessory structure for the property located at 403 South Ocean Breeze, based on the competent substantial evidence in the staff report and pursuant to the City of Lake Worth Beach land development regulations and historic preservation requirements.
Including.
We add the conditions, right?
Oh, it usually says, I just.
Yeah, maybe Annie
With-
could highlight the
with-
conditions for
With
us.
the conditions, with conditions as per staff report.
Okay, can we take a vote on that?
Well, I'll second it.
And then we can take a vote? Yeah, all right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. Move on. That was B. So now we're on to C. HRPB project number 24-001-00032, consideration of a certificate of appropriateness for construction of a new single-family residential structure at 927 South Palmway.
So as always, our location map. So we are just one property in from that corner of 10th Avenue South and South Palmway. We are back in a single family residential zoning district for this property. So here you've got some of the current lot conditions. So that top left photo is a photo of the existing structure, and then you've got a screenshot of the survey down there just so you can kind of see where it's located on the property. That existing single-family structure was constructed circa 1925 in a mission revival style. It's wood frame construction with stucco cladding, flat roof, and originally it had wood windows and doors. It's had alterations over time. There was a utility room addition in 1948. There was a screened porch on the north side of the house that was later enclosed in the 50s. And then there was an open front porch added to the house in the 50s, which was screened in the 80s. So this property is currently designated as non-contributing in that 1998 survey that then ended up creating the South Palm Park Historic District. But in that 2020 Historic Resources resurvey, they did recommend that the structure should be redesignated as contributing. All right, so this is our proposed site plan. So here again, if you remember from that survey, here's the existing house back here. And the applicants are proposing to convert this house to a guest house, so no longer a legal dwelling unit, and build a new single family house in front of it towards South Palmway. So here's the streetscape showing the proposed new construction, both in relation to the existing structure and to structures on either side of it. So you can see the new structure, full 2 stories. It's a bit taller than some of the immediate neighbors, and we'll get into that a little more. You can also see, the existing structure still partially visible behind it. So here are our proposed elevations. We've got the front and rear, as well as the 2 side elevations. And we've got our proposed floor plan. So that first floor is on top here, and the second floor is on the bottom. All right, so zoning wise, similar to the last one, almost completely in compliance with the zoning code based on what we've been provided. The exception here would be the base flood elevation. So in the plans that we were provided, it notes that the finished floor elevation would be 18 inches above the crown of road. We have advised the applicants in pre-application meetings that the current flood zone is 6 feet NAVD, with a pending flood zone of 9 feet NAVD under the new FEMA flood maps. So that base flood elevation would need to be met for the new construction. And we have conditioned that should the design, height, etc., change substantially because of needing to meet that base flood elevation, this would have to come back to you for updated design approval. All right, so again, similar to the last one, we're going to go through our historic preservation analysis. So it's designed with elements of the Mediterranean revival style, which is a related style to Mission. It's not quite the same, but they do share many elements. The exterior wall finish of textured stucco is very compatible with the style. The roof shape and material, they propose a hipped roof with concrete barrel tiles, and they do propose multi-light single hung windows and French doors. There are some elements that could be more compatible in terms of the style. Often Mediterranean revival architecture was asymmetrical, whereas this is very, very symmetrical, I would say. The full 2-story front porch is more common in construction post, 90s and 2000s, not so much in the 20s when the Mediterranean revival style was really, in its heyday. And the Mediterranean revival style is also really known for elaborate ornamentation. There was some ornament that was added to this. They chose to, take some of staff's advice and use a bit more of a decorative window on the front. But yeah, Mediterranean revival originally would have had pretty elaborate ornamentation. So that could be, expanded. on the design. So we do contend that the new construction project is generally compatible with the architectural style, but we do have some concerns as staff about the scale, height, and massing of the proposed structure. So in our design guidelines, new construction section, there is, a scale, height, and massing section of that. So they do specifically talk about, fitting with the street, fitting with the surrounding neighborhood. The surrounding structures here on South Palmway are generally low one-story houses. Between 8th Avenue South and 11th Avenue South on South Palmway, only one property is entirely 2 stories tall. That's 909 South Lakeside, which actually, as the address reflects, it fronts both South Palmway and South Lakeside, but it is oriented towards South Lakeside and set pretty far back from South Palmway. There's a couple others that are partial 2 stories, and once again, typically are oriented towards South Lakeside and or set back really far from South Palmway. So that 2-story height also creates a different relationship between this building's width and height versus the other one. So whereas something that's low and 1 story is pretty horizontal in nature, because this is tall and narrow, it's pretty vertical in nature. We talked about this in the staff report, but part of the applicant's justification for the design is to retain some visibility of the historic structure. When we met with the applicants prior to their COA submittal, we advised them that the board may or may not feel comfortable approving a new construction that would completely block the historic resource from any sort of public view. So to meet their desire for space and provide some visibility of the structure, that's why they were proposing 2 stories. We do, again, like we talked about, we do have some concerns that the building height could increase significantly to meet base flood elevation requirements. But like I said, if there is a major change in that design, we have conditioned it that it would come back to you guys for an updated design approval. All right, so our recommendation here, we are recommending that you carefully review this proposed design. You take into consideration, like we talked about, that scale of the surrounding neighborhood, as well as that relationship with the existing historic structure. Otherwise, except for that base flood elevation that we were talking about, it is consistent with the land development regulations. And we contend that it successfully utilizes, character defining features of the Mediterranean revival architectural style. And as always, we have drafted conditions of approval as well. I know the applicants are here tonight, and I know that we do have at least one public comment for the project.
I think we have one letter here in our package. Is there anything else for public comment?
So the commenter who wrote the letter is actually here to speak to you today.
Okay.
Want to hear from the applicant first?
Yeah. Mhm. Hi.
Hi.
I'm Russell Ayers. My wife Gina and I own the property at 927. We also live in the neighborhood. We purchased it with the intent to build another house in the front because we both have elderly parents, and that actually one just actually moved in with us. And we only have a 2-story where we are now. So we have a 1-story 2-bed. Anyway, so we bought this property from another realtor who had told us that she had already brought this all through this process. And so we were thinking everything was done. We closed on the property back in November. And so we're here to, we took the plans that she had and we're going for it. We tweaked them a little. And I met with Annie and took her suggestions, and one of the suggestions was to have visibility to the what will be the guest house because of the historic part of it. And so I don't know what other questions you may have for me.
Yeah. So the plans are proposing to build it at 18 inches above the crown of the road?
Well,
Can you even are they even allowed to do that then? With the
no, that's
flood
what
situation?
Anne knows that question.
Yeah, so that's kind of what we were talking about with that base flood is the 18 inches above crown of road wouldn't be high enough to meet that base flood elevation. So they would need to revise the design at least somewhat to meet that.
You'd have
So-
to revise it a lot if you're going up at least 6 feet.
So to be clear, NAVD is different than like the natural, so it's not necessarily 6 feet from where the ground is right now. It's a measurement that they use for flood zones and flood maps. Lots of the city is like 3 to 4 feet NAVD. It just depends. I don't know what this property is, South Palm Park. As you can kind of tell by the extra base flood elevation, it is generally lower since it's so close to the intercoastal.
So we don't really know how high they would have to go above grade to achieve the flood plain.
Unless,
Well, there's a house being built, I think 4 floors down, that is a 2-story. That has to do the same for flood elevation, and they don't look like they've gone 6 feet. But it is, you know, a normal size 2-story house, and it's only 4 houses down from what we're proposing.
You have a survey? Give a survey,
A survey was provided.
but I guess does your survey show any elevations on it? Land
To be honest with you,
elevations?
I'm not an architect or a builder, so I don't know, what was on the survey.
Your survey,
They made us get an updated survey, so I would assume that whatever's.
it
needed
should
is
say on the survey somewhere what the elevation of the actual land is, and then you
Yeah,
do
well, I
the
gave Annie a copy. of the
math
survey.
to figure out how high you have to go to build it.
we did have a boundary survey as part of the application submittal. I don't believe that it mentioned the elevation of the property.
Yeah, they might have to get a builder survey.
I don't think, that comes in to get ready to build, because if they did elevate above the neighbors next door, then they could put a retaining wall in to hold back, and then, of course, they can use, exfiltration trench for drainage. So, that stuff could be taken care of.
Yeah, I'm not concerned about the drainage or that it can be done. I'm just saying if we're concerned about the massing and the height,
Right, exactly.
I don't see how this isn't gonna be really.
Well, you know, like I said, they can they can add retaining walls to hold back, the soil conditions.
Yeah,
Yeah, but you
but
don't-
what does the regulation require? The
You won't know that.
regulation,
You won't know that until the elevation is set.
We don't know because we can't make,
So that don't come
like
into play.
their lot could already be plus 3 feet NAVD or something, but like, we don't know. It's not, that information's not
Oh.
available to
Oh.
us.
Is it on a flood map or something? I don't know.
Well, you'll have to get a
Well,
survey.
I mean, there's
back.
already a precedent set on this, on the block already. There's a brand new 2-story going in right, well, we live at 1024 and it's literally right across the street from us, so.
Neighbor is
Yeah.
2-story.
Well, I mean, actually, that's more of a building department issue anyway.
right.
It's not really up. to
But
us.
we're just trying to conform to the historic because there's a historic building on the property, so.
so Annie, what you're saying is we could approve, but if they're gonna run into trouble again with height, it's gonna have to come here again?
Yeah, so basically you'd be approving the design that was presented before you tonight. And if in the course of, working with the building official and the building code to meet those base flood elevations, it got to a point where staff said, this is no longer, really what the board approved. We, can't really approve this as staff based on, what the board saw. We would bring this back to you guys, basically say, this is what you saw before. This is where it's at now. Do you guys still feel comfortable approving this?
And the house that's being built, it's 2 stories. Did that have to come before?
Yes, all new construction comes before the board. I believe the one they're referring to came in. I was not here for that one. It was before I got here. But yes, it would have had to come before the board.
Okay, so if they've already approved a 2-story building, it's gonna be less out of sync with what else is already there, right? Because you're saying there's only one other 2-story building in this area. Is that what you said?
Our
There's
neighbor,
three
our
within
neighbor has a
20 feet.
two-story.
Didn't you say that?
There's one full 2-story and then 2 houses that have part 1-story, part 2-story.
Okay.
So it's not completely inconsistent
Right.
with the area that there's a 2-story. Okay. You said the person who wrote in the letter is here? Are we ready to hear from them?
Good evening. Hi. Do I turn on? Hi, good evening. My name's Frederique Mettner and I live at 909 South Palmway. I live 3 properties to the north of these wonderful neighbors who I had the chance to finally meet this weekend. All on my fault for not meeting them earlier. And I'm really excited that they've seen the potential of the site and saving the accessory structure because it definitely has historic value. I'm not going to repeat everything I wrote in the letter because you have it in front of you. My background though is in historic preservation. And I think, you know, the rear structure is a really charming mission revival structure. I think it's great that they're building a 2-story. I fully support the 2-story. I think the square footage they're looking for makes a lot of sense. I'm just asking for a little bit of design modification that I think will be very easy to accomplish at this stage of the process. Again, not changing their main footprint and their floor plan. The items that I wanted to suggest to the board is reducing the overall structure by 2 feet to not overwhelm the adjoining 1-story structure, especially if they do have to increase it from the 6 to the 9 NAVD. And that could easily be achieved by having a 9-foot ceiling height on the first floor, still a very generous ceiling height. That's just reducing that first floor ceiling height by 4 inches based on the plans. And then the second floor ceiling could be reduced down to 8 feet. So that still gives them plenty of room. They could even trade the ceiling on the second floor. So I think they'll still have very generous ceiling heights, but help mitigate the massing on the adjoining properties. I was also hoping that you all and the applicants would consider modifying the front elevation to be more asymmetrical in design. That is common for both Mediterranean revival style buildings as well as mission style. I think that could easily be accomplished by perhaps just shifting or extending the porch in the front and maybe incorporating a parapet roof over the entry instead of 2 hip roofs and being so symmetrical. Maybe not all 4 windows being arched, some squares, tops, some arch. Again, not changing their floor plan, not changing their square footage on the interior. I think it's wonderful that they are bringing their parents here. I did the structure that was referenced by staff on 909 South Lakeside. I actually respectfully disagree. I think it's not a full 2-story. I think there are elements that are 1-story. It has a mix of hip and parapet roof styles. I think that's a great example on that the 900 block to emulate. Again, 2-story is wonderful and having that mix of roof lines. And then my last request where I think it would bring it more in compliance with properties in this historic district is a single front door instead of a pair of French doors as your entry. Because it is, even if it has side lights, usually a single door is more traditional for an entry feature. So again, I'm thrilled that they're building a 2-story, 3 lots down, but I think with some very minor tweaks, it would be more successful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other comments, public comments? Okay.
Some of the changes that were made to the front of the property, the arched windows and stuff were a suggestion from the store.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at the analysis of the preservation planners, and I think, like, for example, it does say that the elevations are in harmony with neighboring buildings, that the surrounding homes do have a variety of entrance and porch configurations. So the common facade material is compatible. So I think the issue that was brought up is the height that might not be completely in harmony, but I don't know if there were any concerns about any of the design elements on the exterior.
Design elements that were brought up in public comment were mentioned in the design guidelines section. You know, we did talk about that typically they were asymmetrical, you know, a few things about the entrance. staff didn't feel like it was necessarily something we had to put in as a condition provided for you, but it was something that we, addressed, I would say lightly in the staff report. But yes, the height and massing were the primary concerns that we were discussing.
So I'm just wondering, how can we handle this? I mean, is the applicant amenable to some of the suggestions? I mean, if we were encouraging them to consider some of these suggestions, how would we go about that?
So, yeah, you don't necessarily have to take any of the suggestions from public comment. That is up to you as a board. You can discuss with the applicant if any of the things that they heard in public comment would be something they'd be amenable to. You can provide direction to the applicants if there was something that you heard in public comment that you would really like them to make a change on. It's kind of up to you guys how you'd like to take that direction.
Could we go through the drawings again?
All right, so starting at the site plan, there's where we've got the house, that entrance porch, and the existing structure.
And what's that L-shaped thing in the front? I can't really read it.
This is where they're proposing to have their parking.
Okay.
So at least part of this is an existing gravel driveway, part of it would be new. This is their proposed streetscape, so it's there in the center.
So when we're looking at the east elevation there, is the part that's on the left, the one story, is that existing?
Yes, this is the
Okay.
existing structure that will be retained and converted just to an accessory guest house. And then all the 2-story parts are the new construction.
I would think it might be fairly safe to assume that the house would be elevated more than what's shown on this elevation here. And that's, like I said, that's not necessarily our purview. They would need to have some steps leading to the door. And I imagine the first floor line would be elevated at least a couple feet more than what we're seeing there. I don't know. I'm not saying that should prevent us from necessarily approving this if we want to approve it, but it's just a comment on their elevation.
Yeah, and there is some bandwidth for staff to, review and approve minor changes to a design at staff level. It's really just if it was to a level that staff no longer felt comfortable approving it without taking it back to you all for your design approval.
What about the height, for instance, if we're looking at the analysis here and we see a certain height of the structure that's proposed, but we don't know if that's actually going to be allowed by the building department based on the.
I think that it would
Flood
come
zone.
back to us.
Would that come back to us?
Yeah, if we ran into any issues with zoning or building where, there was something that needed to be changed to meet either of those codes, we would bring that back to you with a revised design.
Sounds like a very long process for somebody trying to build something.
This is William Waters, Junior Sustainability Director. What you could do is give a range of how much you feel the building could be jacked up from existing grade, either a foot, 18 inches, and beyond that, you want it to come back before you for consideration. Because as it's shown now, the building's basically at grade, which we know is not likely going to be the case, and it looks like it's more in conformity with the other properties. But if you felt that if it were 12 inches higher or 18 inches higher, you could say within that range, it wouldn't have to come back before the board, but if it had to go higher than that, you'd want to see it again.
Maybe that's a good idea to,
But do we really want to see it? I mean, it seems to me like we should say we probably won't approve it if it's whatever height we say we won't approve it. And then they'll have to figure out how to work within that. I just think this is not good for them to have to, well, let's see if we like it then. It's like what, it seems pretty onerous.
well, it's still within their, you know, they'd be motivated to keep it within that range
Yeah.
than knowing that it would have to come back to
Right.
us. It just gives us another opportunity to review it again, I guess, and maybe we would change our mind based
There
on
is no
new
range.
information.
I'm just thinking, can
Yeah.
we say, can we give them a range that's a
You can't
height
set
that
a
we
range.
say
Well,
would be
let's-
pretty acceptable?
Yeah, so what are you comfortable with?
You can't set a range until they submit a floor plan, then that floor plan got to come from that grade got to come from a civil engineer. Then that is a process.
Yeah, but
So they're-
we know it's going to be
so-
higher.
So right now, you can almost look with the neighborhood right now. You can look almost, it's going to be almost 3.5 to 4 feet. And that's nothing. You can use, like I stated before, you can put in a retaining wall to hold back the soil. And then, if there need to be drainage on site, they can put a exfiltration trench. The B-non-gums thing, it's not really a big deal because this is what they do when for the new construction now.
Ed,
Got-
nobody's concerned about how to make it work.
Yeah, you were
for
concerned
drainage.
about the height.
We're talking about the
The
height.
height, yes.
Okay, so
So
we have to decide
they're gonna have,
what we think is,
they're gonna have
too
to
high.
meet, they're gonna have to meet that floodplain level set by.
Yeah, but what is
FEMA.
the acceptable height that we're willing to let them go up to? Like
can't-
William said, is it 18 inches? Is it 24 inches? What are we comfortable with? That they have some leeway? Because there are other 2 stories in the area.
Why don't we move to approve?
Well, this says here.
Well, we
that
can approve with conditions
single
if someone,
I mean, it's according to the code here, the 30-foot principal height structure
right,
is allowed.
okay.
So that's
And
what,
they're proposing 23 feet 4 inches.
so they're in the guidelines.
So that would mean, but then there's something here about a height at the setback, minimum wall height at side setback. Maybe staff could explain that a little bit about where the minimum height at side setback, because here I see allowable is 18 feet at 5 feet setback. And they're proposing 20 feet 4 at, maybe we could we clarify that a little bit?
The wall height at side setback regulation is intended to, provide some additional setback if a building is going to be a certain height. So that's why sometimes you might see a structure that, kind of tiers in as they go up. So this 20-foot 4 feet, they have proposed it at the minimum setback to have that full wall height. Correct me if I'm wrong, William, but our wall height is typically measured from the minimum base flood elevation on the building. So that wouldn't necessarily, that wall height at side setback would not necessarily be a trigger that it had to be brought back to you. Bringing it back to you is honestly more of a historic compatibility with the surrounding neighborhood question.
So when it says the max building height, 30 feet, is that from where?
That is also from that base flood elevation.
Okay,
But keep in mind, it includes the roof. It's either to the midpoint of a hip or gable or jerkin head roof, or it is to the top of the parapet on a flat roof, I believe. We did change the definition there.
okay, so they can't go over 30 feet anyway.
Overall height. no,
Right?
they can't.
Well, then I'm okay with it.
well, you want to make a motion and we can vote on
Well,
it?
I'd like to say something.
Yeah.
I'm not personally comfortable with approving this because we don't know. Already, we think it's too big. And now we're talking about making it possibly higher up to, account for the base flood elevation requirements. So if it's already too high and we anticipate that it could be needing to be higher because we don't have a survey apparently that shows like what the height is of the ground, I'm not comfortable. It's kind of feels like I'm putting the cart before the horse.
But it's not going over 30 feet. It can't go over 30 feet.
Well, then we need to have a plan that talks about how is it not going to get under 30 feet if it has to be raised. And I don't see that.
You've already approved another house on the street, so, I mean.
Right, but we run into this all the time, sir. We're talking about the people down the street. We're not talking about the people down the street. We're talking about your property. So
I understand, but the building code takes care of it.
Yeah.
Because I think where you're getting a little bit, you're not, it's a little confusing, but though we allow 30 feet as the overall height maximum,
Mhm.
you still have to, there are extra requirements in the historic district, whether that overall height is appropriate and sympathetic to the surrounding community. And so 30 feet is the general for every single-family residential zone district in the entire city. But some streets are fine with that 30 feet, looks perfectly compatible, and other areas it doesn't. And what we're struggling with is houses are having to be jacked up because of the flood elevations.
Right.
So when they try to max out, and the house that we referenced was originally trying to go for 30 feet on top of the flood elevation, and it was considered too tall. And the board, and working with staff, I think it came back before the board maybe twice, it was cut back somewhat. I don't remember what the actual amount was, but it was not allowed to go completely 30 feet. I think that house had to be jacked up 3 feet. And it does include stem walls, as Mr. DeVoe was talking about, where you fill it in inside the stem walls and the house is built on top of it.
Mhm.
But this property being on the opposite side of the street, the elevation kind of goes up a little bit. So it may not need to be jacked up as much as that other house. And so that's why I was giving you kind of a range to go for. And beyond that, we might need to look at it again. And some of the suggestions from Ms. Mittner might have to be considered so that the floor plan doesn't change, but the overall height of the building on its raised slab would still be appropriate with the rest of the district.
You know, in the pictures, the height seems kind of distorted because they made us narrow the property to show the existing structure. So that's why it might not look asymmetrical or whatever the term you're using. We had taken the suggestions of the staff.
Well, I'm happy that they're doing a two-story house. I'd rather see them do a two-story than cover the entire lot or, you know, you know, at least there's more open space and I don't think it's out of place.
Mhm.
But on the other hand, we're looking at an elevation that shows the building that looks like it's sitting on the ground when it's actually going to be elevated. You know, we don't really know how much.
That's a problem. That's a problem. We don't know how much. That's my hesitancies. We don't know how much. And I'd feel better about approving it if I knew how much.
Right. Well, can we provide a guideline, as William suggested, that you'd be comfortable with?
I mean, if it meets the standard for the building permits and stuff, why should it matter here? I mean, aren't you just here to approve the design that it's in conformance with the historic?
Well, true, but you know, if the design actually is potentially going to have a bunch of steps on the front and a little porch and things like that that we don't see in your drawings, that might be one thing that we might be concerned about. But you know, it's tough to say because if we're trying to say, you know, is the height compatible? It's, you know, if we're looking at this, but it's really going to be this, then, you know, it could be incompatible because we don't know how high it's going to go.
Yeah, but there's new standards to building now because of insurance, floods, you know, being in flood zones and stuff like that. So.
No, and we know you're going to have to meet that, right?
Yeah, or I won't
No
be able
matter
to get
what.
insurance on the house. So.
Yeah.
Good point.
Well, does anybody have an idea how we might present a condition that with,
Well, I mean, they have the conditions written here.
You get,
but
we
the
could-
condition that we're talking about with the height limitation is not there. Can we?
I mean, I don't know how we're gonna decide if 2 feet is the right amount or 4 feet is, I mean, you know, to me, I would say stay within the 30 feet. That's what's allowed. Maybe it's gonna look a little odd, but you know, what are we gonna do for 2 feet? I mean, I don't know how. I mean, because they're not gonna know exactly what it's gonna look like. It's still gonna be drawings. It's because I can't move forward until we approve something.
As long as it meets code, does it matter? I mean.
all right.
Everything matters, sir.
I understand, but I mean,
I mean, if they were all
what we're here
one
for.
I know
story,
this has been a long process already. Like I said, we had already thought the previous owner had gone through all this. So now we're 4 months behind already.
right.
And we want to get this to permitting and stuff like
Yeah.
that. And in honesty, it takes a long time to get to get in front of you guys. It'll be another month or 2 months or 3 months just to get approval again. I don't want to have to come back here again to get
Oh, boy.
approval to do the building.
Well, how long is it going to take for you to satisfy our questions? I guess that's what I would like to know. Can it be figured out in a month? You can come back next month? We can,
What question do we have?
I think
Yeah.
that's too long.
Question we
about the
have.
height.
The height,
I
don't,
met with
it
Annie
don't,
on several occasions. She met with the previous owner, I don't know how many times. Only one time.
the staff said meets the recommendation. I mean, it's right there in front of you.
Yeah, it says right here under the conditions, if the building height, wall height, or design significantly altered due to base flood elevation requirements, the project shall return to the HRPB for a revised review. So maybe we identify that height range that it needs to be over if it comes back to us.
That's what I'm saying is I don't think, because we don't really know what it's at to say
Right.
how much more it could be.
So if we
I'm
say
just saying to
18
me,
inches or
they're
24 inches.
30 feet max for me is fine. If that's a 2-story and there are already other 2 stories there and they're gonna put another 2-story, then it's not gonna look like a skyscraper.
Well, it can't go over 30 feet because that's,
You like to make the motion?
that's not the issue.
let's make a motion, move on.
Let's make the motion.
Yeah, I
We
would
can
make,
deal with-
I would make that motion. I move to approve
Okay.
HRPB project number 24-001-00032 with staff recommended conditions for the construction of a new single-family structure at 927 South Palmway. With the building height allowed to be up to 30 feet. It's allowed by building code. Can I say that?
You're amending condition 1.
Yes. Yes, I am. Based upon the competent substantial evidence in the staff report and pursuant to the City of Lake Worth Beach land development regulations and historic preservation requirements.
I'll second it.
You seconded it?
Yes.
Okay, take a vote. All
Aye.
in
Aye.
favor?
Aye.
I vote nay.
I vote yes.
Good luck.
Motion passes 4-1.
We'll probably need
Can
to
we have a
have board,
Can we take a break?
just sort of say, we're probably gonna need to have a
Yeah.
workshop so you can better understand, because what you just approved would allow the building, regardless of the flood elevation, to get 6 feet taller.
Well, that's what I was trying to say. I mean, the 30 feet is, I mean, I would be more, could we amend that to 18 inches like William suggested or 24 inches?
The height, the measurement that she's referring to, the building height, is from the flood elevation to the midpoint of the ridge in the eave of the building. According to Annie, that distance right now is 24 feet. The concern from the guidelines is how much for is that 24 feet going to get jacked up, which is required from FEMA, but it doesn't change how the house is measured. And so some houses, like the one referenced, was required to be made shorter because it was jacked up 3 feet. It could not go to the full 30 feet. And I believe it was very close to that originally, but they chopped out and made shorter trusses. The floor to ceiling heights were shorter. So it still was measured in the same way, but it got about 2.5, 3 feet shorter, but it was jacked up 3 feet from existing grade. So at the end, it's the same overall height. It's just the way that the height is measured, the building was 3 feet shorter.
Okay, I misunderstood then. I thought the 30 feet was from the crown of the road as it is now.
It's measured from the crown of road or the minimum flood elevation, whichever is higher.
Oh, I didn't know that part.
So,
Sorry.
but can I ask a question? The flood elevation is going to change, no matter we like it or not, 'cause with all the new construction coming. And based on FEMA and based on insurance requirements, you got to meet that floodplain elevation. Now, Lake Worth haven't seen the changes that other than your neighbors next door have seen it, but I've seen it. You got to get ready for change. But as long as you minimize and stay into that there 12 foot, where they got to come with a flat roof, whatever they got to do, stay within that 30-foot plane, which they still can, we'll be okay. Everything is not hipped. A lot of people put in flat roofs. They just stay within that 30-foot plane. But you still got that, even though you're doing that, that does not say you don't meet that there FEMA requirement of the floodplain.
Okay, so how do we get out of what just happened then?
I
I'm
think that
sorry.
we get out of it in the terms we need to have, Mr. DeVoe is correct. And there are some houses on South Lakeside Drive that have been a concern with the old flood maps, because we had one that I think the grade on the site is like 3.5 feet. It has, if the new floodplain maps go through, the elevation on that house needs to be at 11
Mhm,
in AVD, which is actually 8 feet higher than the existing grade.
mhm.
There was one already approved that was at 9 feet that they did some landscaping in it, and it's on a very, very big lot, so it doesn't look as out of scale, but we are going to have to get prepared, as Mr. DeVoe mentioned, that the newer houses coming, regardless of where they are in the city, are going to start out being much, much taller,
Higher.
as much as a story taller than the houses next door. And I know people aren't going to like it. It's going to be a shock to the system, but that's where FEMA's going.
Mhm.
And so taking into account that impact, you all, I think we can do some visuals or something so you can understand, because we can't hold the historic districts totally frozen in time. We can't prevent people from developing, but we can come up with some creative ways that they can get the building size that they would like without overwhelming the other properties. And there's a number of methods to do that. And we can look at those through the use of a section on a building. You can hide, room size in roofs. And we'll do that. But, and when it comes back, but I just wanted you to be aware of what you approved. I don't think the gentleman's going to go and make his house 6 feet taller just because you said that, but let's hope not. Because, we will, once we get the elevation from him for his building permit, I don't think it's going to be more than like 2.5, 3 feet at the very max. It's going to jack it up, but we'll see. And we'll go from there. But it is an educational, evolutionary sort of transition to the new normal. And the new normal is getting really tall.
Well, I mean, a suggestion might be, if staff thinks it's a good idea, that we require people to get a survey with an elevation on it before they come before us.
Typically they do. In this case, they were really concerned about coming before you as soon as possible. So that's why we came without that, but
Now we're all a little bit confused about how tall their house is really going to be. So in the future, let's make sure we get that.
The other thing that I'll say, even if under, the revised condition number 1, this doesn't end up coming back to you for design approval, we can, as staff, just give you a little department update. When they do come in with their permitting designs, the applicant wouldn't have to come back. It wouldn't be a decision, but it'd just be us letting you know, hey, that property we talked about, here's what it's going to look like now.
It might be
Okay.
interesting to see how their plans and elevations change when they get a permit that's based on a real elevation with a real survey.
Because it sounds like this is going to keep happening,
Mhm.
right, with floods and building and.
Yeah,
Now we understand it better.
Yeah, yeah.
all right.
All right.
Thank you.
Do we want to, does anyone need to take a break before we move on to the next item, or?
It's gonna be a long night.
So it's going to be okay?
No.
We'd rather just get through it. if-
Yeah, get
Okay, yeah, let's just go on. It's the last item. People have been waiting a long time. All right, so we're going to move on to the final item, D, the ordinance 2024-03.
All right, Madam Chair, I need to read the caption into the record, so I'll go ahead and kick you off. This is ordinance 2024-03, an ordinance of the city of Lake Worth Beach, Florida, amending chapter 23, section 23.3-25, Plan Development District, paragraph E, Mixed Use Urban Plan Development District, providing for townhouses within the single-family residential SFR zoning district as part of a residential-only mixed-use urban plan development, and providing for severability, conflicts, codification, and effective date.
All right, so our Assistant Director for Planning and Zoning, Scott Rodriguez, is going to kick us off with a brief slideshow, and then William, once he's back in, will probably jump in and stop.
Okay, good evening. For the record, Scott Rodriguez with Planning and Zoning. This item is an amendment to the city's land development regulations to allow townhouses in a single-family residential district as part of a planned development. This is a city initiated amendment. And staff is proposing this amendment to provide greater flexibility for housing options in the city. And this, the language in the proposed amendment isn't set in stone. There could be some customization of the language, and these are some of the questions that we prepared, or comments that we prepared for staff for the board to consider. And I'm going to just keep this up for the moment. Like I said, as Annie had indicated, Mr. Waters will probably provide a little bit more detail on this item. But essentially, this is where some of the questions we're looking at that the board can consider. The option for the single family, where it could be located, of parcel size, the maximum or minimum number of townhouse units, how this is related to the affordable workforce housing program, and again, just some considering the definition of townhomes, et cetera. And again, these are some of the items that the board can consider.
Something really quick I want to jump in on. I believe this is the first ordinance that has come before the board since we got some of our new members. So to be clear, so other properties or other projects like the 3 that you saw earlier today, those you were voting to approve or disapprove. This you do not have review or approval power over. You are simply recommending to the city commission to approve or deny the proposed ordinance. And they would be the ones making that approval or denial decision. We do have our director back, so if he wants to give you guys kind of the details of this ordinance.
Okay. I'm trying to figure, I don't want to waste everybody's time, but this is coming out of 15 years of litigation regarding a piece of property in the Sunset area of resident Lake Osborne and right next to Murray Hills. And through good faith negotiations, the property owner and the city had a proposed settlement agreement for those legal proceedings, which are called FLUDRA. And I'm going to let Elizabeth explain what FLUDRA is because it's a really long acronym for a very complicated thing. But this litigation started before I ever got to the city. So in good faith, the city and the property owner had this proposed settlement agreement, which included allowing townhouses in a single family residential district. Though FLUDRA in its application, if it went a certain route, could do what's called spot zoning in a very strange way that was explained to us by the presiding. She's actually a judge, but she's a magistrate way back when. I'm not even sure if that's even allowed now. We were looking at it from a standpoint, what can we do that will satisfy this proposed settlement, which still hasn't gone to the commission, and it still might not even be approved by the commission, to address the issue that the applicant and the property owner wanted to put townhouses on a specific property. So we do not support putting townhouses anywhere and everywhere in an SFR district, which is about 2/3, 60% to 2/3 of the city. It's like all the residential neighborhoods, their most primary function or use in a zoning district is single family residential. However, townhouses under the building code are considered single family residences because they're on lots of record. So putting that all together, we have proposed that if the city were open to it, townhouses could be found appropriate only under a planned development scenario, which requires a minimum lot size. And we have different kinds of planned developments. We have a smaller urban planned development, which requires 1/2 acre. And then we have a larger one, which is residential. Mixed use doesn't really count here. That have to be 2 acres if they're east of 95 and 5 acres if they're west of 95. There's also been a push from the county and the whole region and the city commission to come up with creative ways to provide affordable housing. The proposal that is not under consideration by you, this is what's somewhat attached to, is a proposal where supposedly all the buildings would be sold potentially after being leased as affordable or workforce housing. So in order to produce affordable housing, if you only have to build 3 walls and half another wall, it's a lot cheaper than building 4 walls and independent properties. So this is seen as a way to encourage home ownership options, single family ownership, but it's not necessarily appropriate for every part of the city. So we've got before you different options of how you could look at it. Now, the Planning and Zoning Board recommended to the commission full out denial of this application. You can follow the same route. You can come up with your own recommendation and we'll present both of them to the city commission. But up on the board are ways that it could be considered. What would be the appropriate minimum size of a planned development where you would like to see or be open to townhouses in an SFR district? 1/2 of a block is essentially 400 by 135 feet, which is just over, it's about an acre and a bit. So that's where the half-acre thing came in from the urban plan development. An entire block is about 2 acres. In addition, another area you could look at is what is the maximum or minimum number of townhouses you would like to see, which is also derivative of the land area. The density is not going to change. SFR is 7 units an acre. We do have a 15% increase in density that's afforded if you want to build affordable or workforce housing. That's been in the code for a couple of years now. So the density could get to be about 8 something. If you provided those as affordable housing. So one of the provisions would be, okay, you don't want to see these unless it's a parcel of a minimum size and it has either a minimum or a maximum number of townhouse units. The city's affordable workforce housing program, which this board saw before it was adopted, I think this was in December of 2022, could provide additional stipulations on the planned development such that all the townhouses would have to be workforce or affordable housing versus just the proportionate share that's required by the ordinance, which is 15%. You can also look at the definition of townhouses and see what if certain types of townhouses you'd be open to and not others. Some examples there are non-traditional single-family houses, which are 0 lot line homes, patio homes, small villa homes. The Mago Lair townhouse development right on Lake Worth Road is the Vasta Quads, which are 4 units that each one opens in a different direction. Tiny houses, and there is an ordinance that has been drafted to address tiny houses. This would not necessarily be appropriate for that, but you could incorporate it if that's what you saw fit to recommend. Or if there are other non-traditional single-family housing types that are either detached or attached. So all that is there for you to consider. Some parts of it, not other parts of it, none of it, all of it, and we'll try to answer all the questions you might have. But this is something that would be applicable to the entire city, not just one particular property, if it were to pass by the city commission ultimately. So I'll try to answer other questions, and hopefully that was succinct enough that you didn't get too confused. Okay.
Thank you.
Well, I'm not understanding why it comes to us. Sorry.
Again, you are a local planning agency with equal right to all things that are affecting the LDRs, just as the Planning and Zoning Board is. Because keep in mind, all planning and zoning issues that are in a historic district come before you. None of them go to the Planning and Zoning Board. So if we change the LDRs, such as regulations in an SFR district, you enforce those and are required to make a recommendation of some sort to the commission whenever we make a change to land development regulations. Good, bad, or indifferent, you have 2 hats to wear every time you come here versus 1.
So it sounds,
I mean, it sounds like a lot of your recommendations are reasonable, but I know there's a lot of people in the room that disagree with that are opposed to it. I'd like to know what some of the reasons are, not just saying you don't want it, but why and why you believe that it's detrimental.
Before you hear public comment, I want to remind everybody, this is for a countywide applicable, the citywide ordinance, and it's not specific to any individual property.
Okay, so this is citywide, right? And we're just giving a recommendation. We don't have the power to approve or deny this. We can recommend, and then you guys are going to make the final decision. I mean, your department? No, the city commission will make the final decision. Okay.
The planning board already asked this, so I might as well put it out there.
Okay.
The planning board asked what options they had on the table. You can approve as proposed. You can approve with amendments, including those 5 areas and some definitive definition of what those are. You
Mhm.
could add other ones if you thought they were interested. You could table it after you hear public comment and vote on it later, because it's going to be a lot to take in, because they have some valid points. And or as the Planning and Zoning Board did, you could it's denied outright. Another, if you table it, you don't have to do a date certain. It just sits out there and never land. And then if you do a recommendation to a date certain, you could possibly do a workshop with the Planning and Zoning Board. They did not take that route. They recommended full denial. So when you get to a point where you would like to make some sort of decision, we can revisit your options and see which one you would like to do.
I got a couple of questions. So on a 50, let's say a 50-foot, a 50 by 100. What would qualify that? A quad?
No, the density has not changed. You still could only do 7 units per acre. What it would allow, if you had a combination of properties and the minimum parcel size, because again, can only happen as proposed as a planned development. It's not by right in the single family residential district. So that one lot you talked about can't have a townhouse on it. It can only have a single family. But it's say you had 9 lots that were combined and you have an overall lot area of whatever it is. You multiply that by the density, which is 7, and you could collect all those units in one larger building, leaving more open space, having greater setbacks, for entertaining preservation of trees, provision of affordable housing. If you wanted to attach that to it, you could only do townhouses that are workforce housing.
Let's see.
And keep in mind that the workforce housing does have a limit for a family of 4 of 140% of median household income, which is right about $92,000 times 1.4. So you're well into the almost $130,000 range for a workforce family to qualify under our program.
Well, that lead me to my second question. What's the difference? What's the difference between condos and apartment buildings?
Okay. Apartment buildings are all owned by one owner within one single
I know
building.
that. But if I built the
You mean
same
between townhouses?
townhouses and rentals,
Okay.
if I built the same 4 units and you could call them a condo, which I could sell out and I got a condo association, then if I say, okay, I'm going to rent these out, but I build the same units and I rent them out. What's the difference? Is there any difference
There
in
is
the zoning?
There is some difference, not from a
Okay.
zoning standpoint, but from
Okay.
definition. Again,
I'm going somewhere with
townhouses
this.
have to be
I'm
on.
going somewhere with this, so be
Yeah.
careful.
That's okay.
Okay.
We're here, that's what part of what this is for, is to learn for everybody. The townhouses have to be on individual lots of record.
Mhm.
It isn't necessarily a requirement that each individual lot of record be owned by a different person. It
Right.
does raise issues with the homeowners association if you have mixed ownership, because the state does not like any one entity to own more, and I think it's 10 or 15% of overall either condominium development or a townhouse development. Condominiums, the association owns everything from halfway through the exterior wall to the outside. You as a condominium owner own the inside.
We get that. I'm asking from a zoning standpoint because I want to bring some to your attention. 211 South Ocean Breeze, which is in a historical district. There's a 4-unit apartment building being built on a 50 by 100-foot lot. 4 units. Around it is well, there's apartments and there's a single family residence. 15 South Ocean Breeze. Same thing.
That's a different zoning district. Those are not SFR districts.
It's that SFR district. Okay. So what you're saying here tonight is based on which I understood Sunset Project, that spillover that came from the county was going on for years and years. That is going to that's going to change the landscaping if we go with that.
Well, there are separate, but the site plan that's in the process of being reviewed requires, as it stands now, this zoning to be in place, which is also stipulated by the negotiated settlement.
Mm-hmm. So you recommend to the commission board to turn it down?
If we do, you guys can recommend that.
No, but what y'all recommend? What was staff recommendation?
Based on the good faith negotiations that have been going on for 14 years that got to this negotiated settlement. Staff is recommending something. What it might be, that's why there's so many options up here, is that a
Right.
straight, plain, okay, SFR through plan development, regardless of its size, can have townhouses, and I don't think it's appropriate. Where they may be appropriate and the minimum sizes is need feedback from you. I wish we got more feedback from the Planning and Zoning Board. The citizens here have their thoughts and opinions. I think most of them are going to be against it, which is perfectly fine. And then the commission's ultimately going to have to decide what to do with a settlement that includes some portion of this, an application that includes some portion of this, and trying to end 15 years of litigation.
So we seek to do nothing. Leave it like the hills, like it is. If we seek to do nothing, leave it the way it is.
You can recommend that, and that will be recommended denial to the city commission, and then we'll take that to the commission probably in April. I'm sorry, in May.
Well,
When we start hearing some public comment.
yes, yes.
Well, before we do that, because I'm going to guess that most of the public are going to be against this. And I would, I mean, maybe I should have found out ahead of time why although it just happened this week, didn't it? Yeah, why it got denied. I'd kind of like to know why the planning and zoning
Are
denied
they
it.
just taking the easy way out?
Well, I feel like we're not going to get both sides
Yeah.
tonight if we're supposed to be making a decision. Frankly, all of those things seems to me,
We'll get to you, sir.
I mean, all of these are really complicated. I mean, there's a lot of good suggestions up there. And for us to say, okay, we're going to pick number 3. I mean, I just feel like I would need a
That's
lot
kind
more
of
thought to
the
put
planning
in
and
there.
zoning board was kind of there. They had concerns, and because the zoning of the city was changed in 2012,
Hmm.
which was after this whole stuff started way back when, we downzoned a lot of the city, and much of it, probably, we increased the size of the SFR districts by about 20-25%. The future land use, which is the governing body that lets you, manipulate zoning over in time, one of those board members wanted to see, okay, where does a future land use that allows a higher density overlap with a single family
Mhm.
residential district?
Mhm.
So that was a perfectly appropriate question to ask. There were some other ones, but at the end of the day, the board did not vote on the recommendation of tabling it or continuing it to a date certain in order to have a workshop. That failed. I think it was 5-2, maybe 4-3. If you require it, Sherry may. So then the next motion was to flat out recommend it for denial, and that's what passed. 5 or 6, or thank you, 7-0. And
I mean,
so,
and where do we legally stand if this has been negotiated?
well, it still has to go to the commission, the settlement, and Elizabeth can jump in when she wants. We're kind of in a little bit of a chicken and egg standpoint
Yeah.
because certain things have to happen, allow other things to happen. Which one legally should happen? It's the perfect train wreck of a lot of legal blanky blank. But I'll leave it like, yeah.
How bad the city's gonna be on the hook?
So no matter what the settlement agreement says, you can't contract zone. So the city can contract and say that we agree that we will consider making these changes, but that's as far as they can agree in a settlement. And so that's the language of the settlement, is that we agree that we'll consider it. So this, if it's here before you today, you're considering it, you have a lot of things to consider. We're not suggesting, pick and choose, but if you want to have a discussion on any or all of the topics or additional topics, then, staff is here to answer your questions.
I'd like to know more about, at what point and could a planned development come under consideration? Because we're saying that this would only be allowed if it was a planned development. So what needs to happen for there to be a planned development?
Like I said, we have multiple types, but in furtherance of this one, which is residential only, we have a residential plan development process where you have to have at least 2 acres of land east of 95 and 5 acres of land west of 95. Huh? I know that
How-
I'm giving him the different options for plan development. Where this one is calling on is that we have a smaller version that's an urban mixed-use plan development, only requires a half an acre.
Hmm.
It can be residential only. In addition to that, under the plan developments, that's the only way to partake of the sustainable bonuses, additional height, floor area ratio, and density under tier 2, and it's the only way to avail yourself of the transfer of development rights in the city. So we have narrowed this down to as being under the urban mixed-use residential only planning district, which on its face is only a half an acre. However, you can recommend that number to be different for this particular plan development process if it's in an SFR district. And
So-
what that size is up for debate. Where it could be located, if it's certain areas of the city that are more appropriate for it than others, is up for debate. And all the other little pieces up there that are in those 5 bullets.
So are you saying that anybody can currently build a townhouses if it's a 2 acre, if they own a 2 acre lot east of 95 or a 5 acre west of 95?
Townhouses currently are allowed in the SFTF 14 zoning district. Multifamily 20, multifamily 30, multifamily 40, mixed use plan developments, they are allowed in the TOD districts, east and west, mixed use Dixie Highway, mixed use East 10th, 6th, and Lake and Lucerne, mixed use Federal Highway, and the Federal Highway District.
But they're not allowed in single family residences, which you say is 60% of
Right.
our area.
Yes.
Okay, they're not allowed anywhere, no matter how much you own. Okay.
Okay.
So if we were to recommend approval of this, what's proposed here, then planned developments would be allowed in single family.
Land developments are already allowed in the SFR if you have enough land, the complex, and it can only be residential. Lake Cove up north, right on the 95, is a planned development in an SFR district.
Okay.
We only have a couple.
Is it
Vernon Heights, when it came in, was a residential plan development of a lot of acreage, and that was one. I'm sure, and I don't know the whole history, the Lake Osborne neighborhood probably came in as a plan development when it was in the county before it came here. They can take different sizes and variables, but most land development codes have some kind of plan development process. But it always requires at least 3 public hearings, 1 before an advisory board. Sometimes it's 2 advisory boards, zoning board of appeals, and then planning board, because not every city is like us. And then the hearings before the governing body, which will be the city commission.
But
Okay,
couldn't you,
so now comes a dumb question. How does, if it has to be a planned development, then how does approving this change anything at all? I don't understand.
What this allows is that in that plan development process, you could do a townhouse project versus single family
Mhm.
detached houses. That's the difference.
That wouldn't be allowed under planned development
No.
now?
Not in a single family residential district.
could we,
Okay, so can we maybe hear from someone?
couldn't you use a caveat so,
Oh,
I understand where the city's at with this here sunset. I understand the pickle barrel, but to get out of the pickle barrel, if you only have so much land and you make it where they have to have on-site parking, they got to have drainage, it's almost virtually impossible to get the site done with that. You have to add something to it so you can have this if you can do this, but it's virtually impossible to do that because you don't have the density.
Right.
So, to save face to the city, you got to come up with something on paper. Say, oh, you can have it, but you know they can't get it. You understand? I mean, a lot of cities does that. But I'm talking to Mr. Waters. I'm not talking. I understand you people back, but so I mean, I'll be pissed. I'll be upset if I had a quadruplex next to my house.
Right, okay.
You know.
That's what we're asking you as the 2 boards.
So I think I like to table this, and you guys come back to us with something you can do, so we can consider it. Well, we see you got to make an effort. Well, before you turn something down, you got to make an effort for you to come back to us with some.
Well, if you-
Try if you could. If you can't,
If you were to recommend tabling or continuing to a date certain, I would implore upon you to give us some direction on what you want like change or to be seen in order to make it work or not work.
Well,
That's why all the options were provided.
I'm gonna tell you, it's 50-foot lot. The guy want a quadruplex. I want on-site parking. I want drainage.
Okay, again, on a 50-foot lot, this
100
provision doesn't allow that to happen. And this provision is not proposing that to happen. A 50-foot lot in an SFR district, when the zoning density has not changed, you can only have one unit.
Okay, but a 50 by 100 and 35, you could have.
The 50
quadruplex.
by 100 is the minimum lot size requires an SFR.
There you go.
It's 5,000 square feet.
So if you had on-site parking
We just saw a house that was built on a 50 by 135
for
foot lot.
4 units,
Okay, again, the zoning density is not going to change, so you can't build 4 units on a 50 by 135 foot lot. You'd have to be in in multifamily 30, I believe, to do that. Again, the density is not changing. It's allowing how you combine that density on a property. Now, why they're saying yes is that in the settlement agreement, it's allowing you to borrow density under the plan development process, both from sustainable bonus, the affordable housing program, and transfer development rights.
What does that mean? Borrow
Borrow
density?
We have abilities to increase density by certain percentages if you have a plan development. And I believe the density of the project that was, we really shouldn't be talking about, is greater than 7 units an acre.
Any plan development. The city has various programs that are bonus and incentive programs that are offered for various projects as they come forward. So in a plan development, you have the sustainable bonus incentive program that allows bonuses for density, intensity, and height that you can pay into to receive those bonuses.
green space mitigation.
The city also has the affordable and workforce housing program. The affordable and workforce housing program also allows for certain bonuses, but you have to designate by restrictive covenant a portion of your units as affordable and workforce housing for a period of 25 years. And there's also that the city has a transfer of development rights program where certain projects come in and they can buy into, receive additional development, is it just density
And floor area ratio.
and floor area ratio
Well-
by paying into that program as well.
I think it's really obvious. I don't know enough about to make a decision
No, I
on
agree.
this.
I agree.
What about the
I mean,
workshop idea? Is that
Yeah.
something that we could propose or?
Yes.
Yeah.
Could.
I mean,
we-
what's a workshop entail?
Workshop is generally when you come in, and I think this is the point where we are considering, generally at workshops, the public isn't allowed to speak or provide comment. However, in certain instances, like if we ever talk about short-term rentals or ever talk about artificial turf or ever talk about some of the other things, we would have a special meeting. And there could be a special meeting, a joint meeting between you and the planning and zoning board to discuss all the mutations of this ordinance, hear from the public, take that all in, give staff some suggestions of what to bring back to you, because I would not suggest that you try to pass a recommendation on an ordinance at a special meeting. You give us all the feedback that you would like, good, bad, or indifferent. We could take that in, we rewrite the ordinance or kill the ordinance, whatever, and bring that back to the appropriate public hearings like you're having tonight to make a recommendation to the city commission.
So we would have a workshop and then bring it back to a board meeting to make a
Well, I'm suggesting
recommendation.
you have a special meeting versus a workshop so you can hear from the public.
Yeah.
Okay, I
Because the
think,
public does have some really good ideas.
Yeah.
It's
Can
almost
we
like,
get some of their ideas?
feels like something that we would want to have a charrette or something like that, some public involvement in this, because I feel like the public has been left out of this process and we're.
Weren't notified of the ordinance at all.
Could we? So we had a motion to deny it and
No.
you could bring it back?
Well,
No.
public hearing process is open and you have to, I think, unless the attorney corrects me, you need to hear from the public.
Okay.
Now, what you decide after you hear from all of them we can go over the various options of that.
Is there some kind of a summary we can get? I mean, of some of these recommendations, or is it something we should bring back to the workshop? Because I'm sure there's a lot of good
No,
recommendations.
just open the floor. Let's go. How many people want to speak?
Let's get started.
Yeah, oh, wow. Let's see.
And plus all those over there.
Oh, well.
I'm gonna propose that we have a special meeting, because we're not, if we start this now, we're gonna be here till midnight.
No. Listen, hold on a minute. We
We
signed
have
up
to
for
hear
this.
it all tonight.
We signed up for this. Let's go. We signed up for it. Let's go. Mayor, we signed up for it. Let's go. Come on.
Yeah.
Let's go. We signed up for it. Let's go.
We better get started.
Let's get started.
Okay, so let's get started with public comments. I believe the rules are that there are 2 minutes per person. Is there someone, are you responsible for timing that?
We generally let people speak. The comments generally are not too lengthy. If they are, you will certainly find out.
Okay,
Also,
okay, thank you. All right, let's begin.
call your name and you can line up. I'll call 5 names. You can line up and be prepared so we can go through it rather quickly. Kathy McLeod, George Adams, followed by Mariette de Villiers, and then Nicoletta Lewis.
Send out for the pieces.
We've done it
Kathy McLeod.
quicker.
Council members, make sure you're watching your comments, please.
I start.
Go ahead.
You're on the clock.
Now, the reason why this,
Please introduce yourself for the record, your
Oh,
name and address.
my name
please.
is Kathy McLeod, 124 South K Street. And we're just very new in the city and we're just trying to figure things out. The reason this amendment is being considered is because of a project at 826 Sunset Ridge. And this is something that I don't understand why the historic board does not have this information. The last farm and historic farmhouse and outbuildings are on this property that nobody seems to have mentioned that. Apparently the property was in really good condition until about 20 years ago when the current owner bought it. And he let the property fail.
Ma'am, excuse me.
Yes.
This is comment on the ordinance. If you have comments specific to the property, those can go under general public comment.
This is what I'm addressing. This is why we're considering this amendment because of this property. Now, the property should have been designated 20 years ago. It should not have been allowed to be neglected and.
Yeah, but I think
deteriorated.
what we're trying to, excuse me, does this have something to do with the ordinance of allowing townhouses in the single family district?
Well, that's what's being proposed on this property, the single townhouses.
Okay.
And the developer, and it's as if these buildings didn't exist, as if the property didn't exist. It is the last remaining farmhouse in Lake Worth. So why was this not considered at all in this proposal? There are so many other ideas for this particular property.
That's fine.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For your timing.
We keep it time.
George Adams, 3320 Lake Osborne Drive. I disagree, and I want to reiterate the PCB meeting minutes from last week. They voted this down basically because it's such a hot potato and is so confusing that they just said, no, we don't want to touch this at all. And I want to make a couple other points. Because of all the upgrades that are available to this type of thing, you can actually get up to 10 units per acre. That's sort of what I see in an example before. So keep that in mind. That it's even though you heard earlier that it's fewer than that, it can actually upgrade to about 10 units an acre, which is a awful dense thing for what was traditionally SFR. So keep that in mind. And also, I want to make the point that the LDR amendment as written has the appearance of being a spot zoning action. It really does have an appearance. So that's another hot potato I don't think you want to touch. Regarding the actual LDR itself, I think it's going to impact the underserved of the community. I believe this will displace a significant part of the marginalized community, as these are the most affordable houses and the ones that are most accessible for being upgraded. And then you're going to end up with a zoning update that has the potential to make our housing situation worse rather than better. In addition, I think there's an impact to the Lake Worth architectural charm, culture, and historic preservation. I know, as you do, that there's a whole bunch of really classy old South Florida architecture in Lake Worth that other communities have lost. I take an example of the quintessential homes that are on Osborne Drive, Lake Osborne Drive. If a developer were able to gobble up enough of those, they could put townhouses all along that whole drive and have the impact that which you would expect with land use and traffic issues and all that other stuff on Lake Osborne. In addition, I think if you take this as it is, you introduce even more litigation issues. I think you're going to have people litigating to want to. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next.
You want to move on to
Yes,
the next
move on
one
to
and
the
then
next-
you
move
can
to the
do
next-
the hereafter?
Good evening. My name is Mariette Adams de Villiers. I reside at 5820 Lake Osborne Drive in unincorporated Palm Beach County. I'm a resident and the president of Lake Osborne Estates Civic Association, which represents 500 neighbors of the 826 Sunset Drive. The ordinance change seeks to amend zoning regulations concerning what should be a historical property within our midst. We oppose this change. The future land use somehow in some past board was increased to a higher density with no reasonable consideration for what's been there for 100 years. Our neighborhood's heritage deserves to be preserved, not sacrificed at the altar of short-sighted development. There are practical implications of the zoning change, increasing traffic on already over-traveled roads. Our streets are not equipped to handle a surge in traffic volume, and the strain on our infrastructure would be felt acutely. Overall quality of life would suffer. We must safeguard our natural surroundings for future generations and not pave over them in the name of progress. In the matter of Sunset Drive connected with the ordinance, there should be consideration given to its historical mark. 101 years old is the age of the house that sits on it. Imagine all of the established vegetation and wildlife that lives on it. This house was lived on going back prior to World War II and Commissioner John Prince establishing the
Ma'am,
park or even
again,
the park airport.
This is not related. This is the ordinance related to townhouses and single-family residential.
I'm sorry.
developments.
I thought that this was a public hearing.
It-
Yeah, but it's, the comments are related to the ordinance.
With the project.
It is not connected to any project. It is not related to any
There is an
specific
ordinance
property.
that would affect that. Can I finish what I was saying? And will I
Please.
have my time?
You got 30 seconds.
This
That-
does not
that has
relate
been
to
cut
any
by
single
somebody, so I
property.
think that resets.
45.
Okay, thank you. So we are highly concerned that the proposal to change ordinances and zoning has not been properly communicated and explained to the public to include all of Lake Worth Beach and neighbors affected. If a property is sold in this community, we want to see single-family homes in the traditional way with no bonuses, no added densities of any kind. This is what our community has been about, the generations, the memories, and not attached townhomes or anything other. Thank you.
Moving forward. Let people say what they want to say without interrupting, because they will be here all night.
Yeah, but we just want to limit the comments to the matter, the ordinance.
Hi, my name is Nicoletta Lulis and I live at 821 Sunset Drive. I
I want to avoid saying things that other people had said. Like, it's obvious. You could go look at the place. You could go watch the video from last week from the planning and zoning meeting. But in investigating for 3 years and trying to figure out what is going on here, I found a few things, and there has been so many red flags, and I just heard some tonight. Respectfully, Mr. Waters, I remember things happening at other meetings where you had said that we are 65% single family homes, and then the numbers kept being answered here lower and lower, that we were less than 65%. It has become clear to me when I keep seeing these red flags that I see the motive, besides living there and witnessing this go on all these years. But I had been researching, and at first it was townhomes on a half an acre. Now it's a quarter of an acre. Now I love the explanation because I've been reading and I still can't figure out how the zoning works. But apparently the only way to get the transfer of development rights is to be zoned as a small urban mixed use development. And that's what I was always trying to figure out. But I guess it was all about getting another bonus incentive. And that's one of the 3 that you all would be getting on that property. Sorry, but that would be any property if this amendment happens. And back to the original, I'm a school teacher. It just red flag. The definition of a townhome, okay? What's the definition of a townhome? It seems to be getting remolded so that it can work with development approvals. It's not a villa. It's not a tiny home. It's not a 0 lot line. In fact, according to the dictionary online here, the Oxford Languages Dictionary, it's a tall, narrow, traditional row house, generally having 3 or more floors. So why are we trying to squish in certain things to try and be creative and redefine what a townhome is? It doesn't make any sense to me. That's fine. Thank you.
Jonathan Straight. Followed by Peggy Fisher. Then Kathy Musgrave.
My name is John Hookstrait. I live at 3080 Lake Osborne Drive, Murray Hills. One word that hasn't been said yet is precedent. I think this will set a precedent in the city. Realizing that what we're focused on is 826 Sunset Drive, but the comment that just came out about buying up adjoining properties, tearing the buildings down and creating townhouses is a real, I think is a real possibility. So I think one thing you need to consider is that this is precedent setting, and keep that in your minds when you think about this. Thank you.
Peggy Fisher. Peggy Fisher.
Next, ma'am. Come on, ma'am.
Maybe Sherry, can you read out more at a time and then people can get themselves organized?
Can't hear in the hallway. So that's why the delay. Peggy Fisher, North A Street. Communication. How much of this has been communicated to every property owner in single family neighborhoods throughout this city? Very little, if any. I live in a single family neighborhood in District 3 now. I don't want townhomes being built anywhere around me. And I think there are a whole lot of people in this city who don't want planned townhome developments coming into their single family residential neighborhoods. This ordinance has got to be communicated to the property owners in this city. And if it's not, the city is not doing their job and upholding their responsibility to the residents and constituents and taxpayers in this city.
Can I just say something? I appreciate the comments, but I would love to hear reasons why. I know that a lot of you don't like it, but I would be very interested to know what your concerns are and why that would help all of us, I think, make a much better decision. I've heard really like one, like, you know, maybe
Hear those reasons coming
okay,
up.
okay, well,
Give me 1 second to do Kathy Musgrave, Bill Musgrave, and then Carol Machowski. in that order?
I'm however not going to give you those exact reasons. What I'm going to say is that my parents have been bringing me here from the
You
early,
need to identify yourself.
I'm sorry, so sorry, Kathy Musgrave, 2920 Lake Osborne Drive. My parents have been bringing me here since the early 50s, and I always looked at Lake Worth as this kind of quirky, quaint little town that I never wanted to leave. And I ended up many, many years later, which I won't count, and finding out that my husband and I actually wanted to buy here. And it was because of all the experiences I had as a little girl, especially coming to Lake Worth. What I'm afraid you're going to lose in this whole situation is the ability to build things that shouldn't be built. You've kept big, huge places from building on the sand on Lake Worth Beach. You have kept 6 and 7, 8, 10-story buildings from being built in inappropriate places. We need to keep townhomes and those apartments like them, whatever you want to call them, from being built in single-family areas.
Bill Musgrave, 2920 Lake Osborne Drive. Naturally, I agree with my wife.
That's always.
I'd like to say a couple of things. First of all, I grew up in Kansas City, Missouri, and the neighborhood that I grew up in, which was single-family homes, was essentially overtaken by aggressive developers who started putting up townhomes in a traditional single-family residence. It drove longtime residents out. It highly escalated property values and taxes that forced even more people out and has totally changed the character of this neighborhood. And I saw it happen over the years that I was living there. I appreciate your comments earlier talking about scale and massing and compatibility and sensitivity, those kind of concerns that you have as you talked to the developers of other properties here this evening. I would urge you to keep those terms and philosophies in mind when talking about a blanket change in your city development plans. I can't believe that you would want to give up in whole cloth the ability to control the policies in your city. Thank you very much.
Followed by Joanne Gillies, and then Greg Harmon.
Hello, my name is Carol Mahalski and I live at 3360 Lake Osborne Drive. I didn't speak at the meeting last week. I'm not a public speaker. I was really intimidated by it, but I regret that decision and I wanted to have my voice heard. There is something very special about single family homes and single family neighborhoods. Single family homes have no shared walls and no shared noise. A single family home has a backyard, no matter how small, that is theirs to use, to decide about whether you want to have a garden, a kiddie pool, pets, landscaping. Children learn the pride of ownership and a strong work ethic while helping or as small children watching their parents maintain their homes. This does not happen when an HOA takes care of your green space, your home exterior, and probably even your trash removal. I also feel that there's been kind of inaccurate terminology when used to convince the city that townhouses homes are single-family homes. By saying that a single family lives in the townhouse does not make it a single-family home. And I think we need to keep single-family homes. Thank you.
Joanne Gillies, I live at 719 Sunset Drive. I object to the ordinance of changing a single-family residential zoning to allow townhouses throughout our city. When you buy a home
in a zoned single-family area. You have bought the right to live in a residential, single-family neighborhood. Townhouses should not be allowed. This will change the entire city atmosphere. What happened to the city of trees and the quaint neighborhoods that the Lake Worth Beach advertises? Single-family 7 zoning needs to stay just that, residential homes that attract families. Do not allow townhouses in single-family zoned areas, which will increase traffic. And please stop giving the developers the power to destroy the lifestyle that so many of us have been living. Deny this ordinance, this proposal.
Good evening. My name is Greg Harmon. I'm at 2840 Lake Osborne Drive. Thank you for taking your roles seriously here. I am thankful for that, impressed by that. I'm here this evening to speak against this ordinance, and you've heard from and will continue to hear from a number of individuals on this topic. There will continue to be lots of discussion about the important details that have been covered here. However, I believe this board may have the most important collective voice on this matter, in fact. While city staff and other civic boards and attorneys may quibble over the use of particular words and that are used in codes and ordinances, you have uniquely been given the opportunity to discern the aesthetics and the general appropriateness of this ordinance. Let me read from your own document, which is on your website, Lake Worth Beach Historic Preservation Design Guidelines. While this document is specifically addressing designated historic districts, I believe that you will find the same principles apply as you consider this ordinance. I'm reading from, and actually the staff referred to this earlier, a section that's called Special Considerations, New Construction, Scale, Height, and Massing. I begin my quote. Few things can disrupt a historic street and district more than new construction that is out of scale, too tall, and simply overwhelms a lot. The relative size and height of a new structure is regulated by the city's land development regulations. Even if the zoning code allows a 2-story structure on a street made of 1-story historic homes, a 2-story structure may not be appropriate. Sensitivity and compatibility with the neighboring structures and homes is as important by what is allowed as what is allowed by code. When considering new construction in a historic district and confronted with questions about scale, height, and mass, look around.
Sir, this is fun.
Look around the neighborhood. All the answers are there.
Hi. Jill Carlin, Renee Frost, David Sims.
Good evening. Thank you so much for hearing our concerns. And if you listen to the Planning and Zoning Board meeting, you'll hear a lot more. There were hundreds of people there. And I myself do not know why, 2381 Sunset Avenue in Lake Worth. So I, number one, do not understand why this is being heard in front of you, as it is not in the historic district. However, because it is being heard in front of you right now, I think it's very important that you consider that this is among the most important historic properties in Lake Worth Beach. It is the last remaining farmhouse, the structure being over 100 years old. And
I have to interrupt again. We are not discussing that specifically.
well, I'm going to carry on. So it's my opportunity to do so. So that particular property, if you guys designated it historic, could have a whole different range of possibilities in our community. Now, one of the reasons why the developer is saying that it is in compliance with the zoning around is because it's surrounded on three sides by Murray Hills. And that is more dense, but it's 32 feet above Murray Hills. Their wall, their retaining wall is in question right now. They're very upset about that. You'll hear about that. But the other thing is it's a dead end street. That street is a single egress and entrance into that neighborhood. To put townhouses there is impossible. Not only it will increase the traffic by 300 cars each day on a very quiet single-family home residential street. There is no other egress, no other entrance to that property. It is inappropriate. Thank you very much for your moment.
Good evening. Most of the stuff here I had to say, everyone has said before. They said it.
Please state your name.
Oh, I'm sorry, Renee Frost, 2212 Quell Trout. I actually bought my house 3 years ago in this lovely, quiet South Florida neighborhood. And never in my wildest dreams did I think that one of the first knocks on my door was a neighbor telling me about a townhouse development. We are a single-family residential neighborhood. We have been. There is no need to change the zoning to allow townhouses in a single-family neighborhood. And on that point, most of the city is not aware of this ordinance that is put before you tonight that the Planning and Zoning Board denied last week. I urge you to deny this, deny this, deny this. Thank you for your time.
David Sims.
David Sims, 715 North L Street. I am a resident of the city. I do not live in the area in question. Someone on the board asked, what is wrong with this besides us not liking it? If this is approved, if townhouse zoning, if townhouses are allowed in single-family areas, it'll affect, as has been mentioned, more than half of the city. That means single-family areas throughout the city, there would be nothing stopping development of townhomes in those areas. You're the Historic Resources Board. Your job is to preserve historic resources. Lake Worth is one of the last places in South Florida that hasn't been completely paved over with high-rise condominiums and massive malls and, you know, 4-lane roads and just massive development everywhere. We're one of the few places left. If development is permitted all over the city and we stop being this historic place, there's going to be nothing left. So as a historic board, I would think that you would take that very seriously. Thank you.
Amy Milik.
I just want to make one quick comment. That gentleman spoke to the ordinance. So if the rest of you can speak to the ordinance, as we've all sort of been saying, it's helpful to us because, to be honest with you, other stuff just kind of goes in and out. So if you can speak to the ordinance and how it will apply other than your little area.
We're gonna have Amy, then Janice Rosillo, and then Tom Conboy.
Hi, Amy Mihalik. I live at 2032 Collier Avenue. So my neighborhood is one that would be affected by this ordinance. I live in a single-family residential neighborhood. There is a 4-acre property nearby that if it was a planned development with townhouses, that could increase the density up to 10 units. And that particular property can only come through our neighborhood. It's not connected directly to a main street. So that increase in density would add a lot of traffic. And the one thing I really love about my single family neighborhood is that there's so many people that walk their dogs and people that ride their bikes and their families. And it's just, there's children that play up and down the street that play basketball. And if you're adding that density and you're adding 300 car trips per day down my street, that puts all the families at risk that use, that are out enjoying the neighborhood. So I really don't want to see that. Would change the whole vibe. Plus, I have a lot of friends who live in townhouse developments, and being realistic, each room is rented out individually, even if it's under the table. You might have like a couple in one room, especially if it's a 3-bedroom townhouse. You've got a couple in one room, another couple in another. You've got a single person in the other one. You've got 5 people sharing a townhouse.
It's happening now.
It does happen.
It's happening, yeah.
All my
Whether it's a
friends.
townhouse or whether it's
And that's how they get cheaper rent, $400 a month, because they're splitting it between 5 people. So if you're adding that into the middle of a single family neighborhood, you're getting even more density on top of all the bonuses that developer can get to get it up to 10 units per acre. And now you're adding even more per room. So that kind of density puts a strain going through a single family neighborhood, which is, traditionally a lot less. So I really don't want to see that happen.
That's fine.
Thank you.
Janice Russillo, Tom Conboy.
I think I'm the newest citizen in Lake Worth. My son,
Could you identify yourself, please?
Janice Russillo. I live at 2101 Collier Avenue.
Thank you.
My son lives in Lake Worth and talked me into coming down from New Hampshire, where I've been enjoying my life, and told me charming stories about Lake Worth, which now I think is fiction. And I feel violated. I bought my house 10 weeks ago. I've moved here cross country, spent $33,000 to get my belongings down here to move into the house I think I would live in for the rest of my life. I have a beautiful backyard. Little kitties come out. I'm starting to feed them to make sure they're not going to have to kill to eat. I can't tell you how disappointed I am. I have an undergrad degree in urban planning. This violates everything I learned. And I'm shocked. I'm disappointed. I've spent a lot of money to buy this house, thinking that I will live in it and enjoy it. And I have neighbors and new friends that I just love. I want to be here, but not in a town that is doing this. You cannot have single family designation and then start changing it and bringing in things. We didn't want those things. That's why we bought our houses where they are. We do not want to lose value. I can't afford to have my house dropping in value, because if I have to live with townhouses, I'm going to try to leave and go someplace where people tell the truth. And I think you're making a huge mistake. You want to be, I know my son told me this was the first beach, the first, oh, you love it here, it's so sweet. Yeah,
That's fine, Karen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Tom Conboy, business owner, 30 South M Street. I also live in Lake Osborne Estates. This is very weird planning. I'm also a professional engineer. We have a developer bringing this resolution to you. This developer is looking to get 42 units on a space where he's allowed 28 units, which that's an increase of 50%. Now, this isn't spot zoning, because automatically, if you approve this and the city approves this, it applies everywhere in the city. So it actually happens right away, but we haven't done any analysis of where this is going to affect the rest of the city. And as Peggy Fisher mentioned earlier, most of the rest of the city has barely been notified on this. So that discussion has not happened. This is planning in backward motion. It's not a good plan, especially when we're increasing our units by 50% in this one place. That's the objective of this ordinance, for this one developer to get his units in. But what does that do to the rest of the city? And from a historic planning perspective, how many historic properties do we have that are neglected on purpose to be able to demolish them? Will somebody start buying properties and trying to get some of our historic cottages demolished so that they can build something bigger? Possibly. Thank you.
Catherine Cargill, Karen Risch, and then Ruth Lynch.
Thank you for your service. My name is Catherine Cargill. I live at 3320 Lake Osborne Drive in Murray Hills. And I'm opposed to this ordinance. I think it will change the character of the area that I live in. And like the lady that just spoke, you know, I've been coming here since 2003. In 2015, I bought into Murray Hills to care for my parents until they died. We love this area. I walk my cats in a stroller because I need a walker, and I walk through all the neighborhoods every day. I wave to people, gotten to know my neighbors. What a lovely community. And what you approve today, if you approve it, will affect the entire city. And I love this city. Please don't do this. Thank you.
Just to clarify, we're not approving anything this evening. We're making a recommendation or. Yeah.
Karen Risch, Ruth Lynch, and then John Lynch.
Ruth Lynch, 2802 Lake Osborne Drive, 21-year resident of Lake Osborne Heights. I can only speak on my experience and how I feel, and this proposed ordinance would change profoundly and negatively affect my neighborhood. The name Lake Osborne Heights refers to its location on the top of a remnant ridge that rises above at an elevation of 36 feet and then abruptly falls away on three sides, forming a 4-acre peninsula suspended 22 feet above Lake Osborne Drive and the lakes. So you know what land I'm talking about. What an ideal location for this original Lake Osborne homestead built in 1923. Topographically, the sunset land is physically part of our neighborhood, Lake Osborne Heights. Therefore, when determining zoning compatibility, only the current density of the Lake Osborne Heights neighborhood should be taken into consideration. This neighborhood was built in the 1950s, and it contains 336 single-family, single-story, ranch, mid-century, old Florida style homes, every one, and one church. Lots closest to the sunset land average less than 4 homes per acre. Lots on the remainder of the ridge, less than 5 homes per acre. This proposal is for 10.5 units per acre, as you've heard, over twice the current 4 to 5. I ask the board to deny any land use zoning or ordinance change that exceeds our current density of 5 per acre, because it's simply out of character with the rest of the existing, unique, and historic Lake Osborne neighborhood. I ask the board to deny this proposed townhome ordinance change citywide because it does not meet the LDRs. In the Lake Worth Beach Code of Ordinances, section 23.1-3E, I quote, It
doesn't work like
that.
Doesn't work. Dr. John T. Lynch, also known as Terry, 48-year resident of Lake Worth, owner of Lake Osborne Animal Clinic in Lake Worth, current resident of 2802 Lake Osborne Drive for the past 30 years. I've had to change my talk because most of it was on Sunset Ridge, which this was initially supposed to be about, but I guess we change as times go on here. I strongly recommend denying this high density ordinance. I mean, just as my wife said, which I agree with her most of the time, we're in a neighborhood of 4 to 5 houses per acre. Ruthie and I happen to live on an acre. This gives us the incentive to maybe to sell it and put 10 units on there, okay? And what would that do to my neighborhood? Because believe me, I butt 10 houses and they'd love me if I did that. Okay, so guys, think about this when you're thinking about this. Would you want this next to you? You want townhouses next to you in a single family residence? No, you don't. This is Lake Worth. It's not Wellington. It's not Boca Raton, which likes high density. We don't, okay? I've lived here for 48 years and I know he's lived here that long and we don't want it. Okay, so deny it. Thank you.
Roland Renfrew, Roland. You sure? Okay. I changed your mind. John Renfro. Then it'll be Susan Bonschansker. Bonschansker?
John Renfro, 3280 Lake Osborne Drive. I'm going to make it simple. The only reason this ordinance is coming up to you and to the city is because of this developer.
Susan Bonschansker. This is you. Bill Yates. Okay.
Good evening. I'm Bill Yates, 3120 Cynthia Lane, Lake Worth Beach. When I started to write my comments, it was based upon the William Waters February 26th notice, which you all have, and which we received about the meeting. And in that notice, it says that it was Chris Rowley requesting approval of the subject privately initiated amendment. But what did he say tonight? He didn't say that. He said it's a city initiated amendment. Because last week at the zoning meeting, Chris Rowley said, this wasn't mine. I didn't want this. I wasn't looking for this. The city wanted this. So this is all changed. So when people here are saying notice didn't go out, I don't know when this was changed, when this became a city initiative, because last week it was presented to all of us as a developer initiative. And I'm saying that just to be cautious about this and also to recommend that you need to review the notes from that meeting. It also, the basis for this is that passage will result in greater flexibility for the city. But I think what's more important for the safety of residents is that we have a deliberative process where people can come in and participate and ask questions and speak to you. And I do thank you for listening to us and volunteering your time. You ask, why should we not support this particular initiative? And you've heard a variety of issues, but I want to go to your own strategic plan.
Unfortunately, you got time.
Pardon me?
Time.
We get it.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
James Pellegrino. Okay. Like the water. Okay.
I'm going to be brief. And I also thank you. I've been on that side before for many years.
Name and address.
James Pellegrino, 3200 Lake Osborne Drive. This ordinance, and I'm going to speak only to the ordinance, was made by a builder, for a builder, not for the residents of Lake Worth. And I'm talking citywide. If you think this is tough, wait till they start trying to build them in your historic districts. You were talking about South Palmway, which is beautiful. I love it there. Could you imagine townhouses over there? And this workforce housing, I mean, the housing that is proposed, and I'll only digress for a moment, it's $42,000 a year just for your rent. What workforce is that? I mean, come on. This ordinance would destroy this city. Would destroy it. And just one more note on the other project. It's only 4 acres, not 5. Thank you.
James Schumacher.
Jane Shoemaker, 3402 Cynthia Lane, Lake Worth Beach. I just want to reiterate again that I'm deeply concerned about the impact that this will have on our community as well as the city in general. And this zoning was created for sunset property, which is why you keep hearing it, because that's why it was created. It's trying to be applied in other areas, but it was created to make the accommodations for the sunset property. And the settlement agreement that William Waters refers to is not a binding settlement agreement. So it should not be an initiative to create this zoning. And this zoning, if you consider it as SF7, as many others have mentioned, by the time you've put all these other factors in there, you're talking about 9.5, 10 townhouses per acre. Again, it will ruin the complex of Lake Worth Beach, and I request that you deny it.
Linda Mahoney.
Linda Mahoney, formerly 319 through 325 North O Street. 3 contiguous 50-foot lots. Over 1/4 of an acre, almost 1/2 an acre. I could have replatted it and sold off half of it under this ordinance for townhomes, or I could have sold the whole thing for townhomes. And I could have still been counting my money. I would not have done that to my neighbors. I bought in a single-family neighborhood because that's where I wanted to live. It's where my neighbors wanted to live. If I had sold this property and this ordinance was in place, they could have torn down the non-contributing house that was left on the property and built townhomes, and it would have forever changed the block and the neighborhood in Parrot Cove and the Old Lucerne Historic District. Instead, I sold 1 50-foot lot, and they built a beautiful single-family home that meshes with the neighborhood seamlessly. I sold the other 2 lots, and they have rehabbed, and I'm sure they appeared before you or your predecessors for their approval. They rehabbed the 1935 non-contributing structure, took off the addition, and it looks more beautiful than it probably did when it was built. In the middle of the 2, there is still a 50-foot lot on which they might decide to build a single-family home in the future. And I hope it will fit as seamlessly as the one on either side. But if this ordinance had been in place, I could have sold my property and the new owner could have done exactly what's being proposed here tonight. Thank you.
So the balance of the comments are to be read from Tom Voss, Celeste, and Michael McLeod. And then we have comments that were provided to you previously. I'll go through them briefly. We'll try and keep it down. So Thomas Voss of 3080 Cynthia Lane said that rule changes to existing neighborhood is unfair. Celeste, and I'm not sure I'm going to say this last name correct, DeGuezis, there we go. I'm against the ordinance to allow townhouses within the single-family residential, especially within existing and established neighborhoods. Thank you. Michael McLeod, His comment is, a portion of the comment is specific to a site plan. The balance of it reads that a citywide zoning change should not be approved without greater consultation with residents of City of Lake Worth Beach. Next, we have a comment from Brooke Weshy, 219 South K Street. She would like to encourage the board and our elected city officials to vote against the amending the LDR that will allow townhouses to be built within the single-family residential neighborhood. I purchased my cottage because I wanted to live in a single-family neighborhood that has an active community. Lake Worth Beach residents take great care in restoring, preserving, and maintaining historic cottages. It's up to the city to ensure that the neighborhoods and the residents are heard and protected from unwanted modern development that would alter the character of the neighborhoods and negatively impact residences. Townhouses and multifamily housing units do not belong in the historic downtown and other SFR throughout the city. We are not Delray, Boca. I ask that you please vote against the amendment. Gail Silverblatt, 414 North Ocean Breeze. Dear board members, my husband and I own a home in the single-family district of Parrot Cove. We're very much against the proposed ordinance 2024-03 Townhouse LDR Amendment. Under past zoning considerations, the idea was to build townhouses on the main runways such as 6th Avenue South, 10th Avenue North, Dixie Highway, and Federal Highway in order to protect the neighborhoods from increased density and the intensity of traffic. But now staff is proposing building townhouses within single-family neighborhoods. There's an expectation from homeowners who buy a home in single-family neighborhood that it will remain single-family zoning. The homeowner shouldn't have to worry that it will be changed or that the density will be increased. Please do not recommend approval of this ordinance. Thank you. The next comment would be from Joseph Cobb, 3360 Lake Osborne Drive, Building 1, Suite 101. He's respectfully states, please be advised, I am not against single-family homes being built in Lake Worth Beach, but it strains all credulity to consider a townhouse development, single-family homes. It's important that we keep the atmosphere of Lake Worth Beach and not overcrowded with townhouse developments. Please vote to keep Lake Worth Beach the family-friendly environment that we are all striving to maintain. Lori Witkin of 1008 North Lakeside Drive is totally against letting townhouses into single-family neighborhoods. Adding density would destroy the charm of the area. We would lose green space as developers cover most of the lots with concrete. There would be increased traffic, parking, and noise issues. It will bring a boring uniformity to what our neighborhoods with diverse architectural styles. There are plenty of empty lots on Federal. If a developer feels like building townhouses, let them go there. Sam Smith of 109 North Palm Way is unsure of why this board is considering the ordinance to allow townhouses within the single-family zoning district when planning and zoning has already rejected the same. Nevertheless, as a taxpayer, is wrong to change the zoning of all single-family zone neighborhoods to permit multifamily townhomes. Current residents who bought homes in single-family zone districts should be able to rely on that zoning designation and not have the city for a developer attempt to rezone the homes. Those of us who bought single-family homes in the city in reliance on the current zoning are now having to fight this terrible bait and switch. This is wrong and should be rejected. And I think we're at the end. And our last one is from Laureen Tapolini, who lives year-round at 2840 Lake Osborne Drive, Murray Hills. A week ago, she attended the planning and zoning meeting regarding zoning law changes and development of a certain property. I'm surprised to see the zoning change to allow townhomes being developed in single-family zoning homes on the agenda after so many residents came out in opposition. She's opposed to developing of certain properties and opposed to spot zoning. She says we cannot become another Delray Beach and we can't drop a 42-unit townhome development into a single-family area. By allowing the change, it would do irreparable harm to the community, infrastructure, and already fragile surrounding environment. Please vote no to any future change in existing single-family housing areas to change existing zoning laws to spot zoning. This issue has too many far-reaching implications to be voted on without informing the public in a more open forum, if I'm interpreting this correctly. Thank you. Laureen Tapolini. That's it.
Okay, so I think we heard a lot of good reasons why
I have one more.
Oh.
One second.
Oh, one
Sorry, there's more. This one came in a little bit past the deadline for what we normally accept with the, online. But I'll, let me. This is from Matthew Pritchard at 418 South L Street. And he said, preserving single-family areas goes against the very nature of the city, opposes therefore allowing townhome developments in our single-family zoned areas.
Okay, so I just want to say that a lot of the reasons against are valid. I think I would suggest we can't really make that decision tonight. I mean, I think we need to study some of this and to get some feedback. For example, will this replace property? Will the people be tearing down property? Is this going to force people out? Our house is going to drop in value. The density issues. I mean, I think these are valid points that I'm not sure. I don't have facts. I have a lot of great,
Chair.
suggestions and.
Madam Chair, I understand I understand what you're saying. I see our mayor out there and our District 1 city commissioner. And we and staff are the extended arm of that commission. And I like to make a motion to kick this over to the commission. We carry out their.
It is going to the commission. But we have to make a decision to.
Hold on a minute. Our recommendation to deny and kick it back to the commission. When they come back with a recommendation back, then we'll proceed. But
that's not how it works.
Your role is to make a recommendation to the city commission.
Whoa.
They are the final decision makers.
Well, if I had to make a recommendation, I'd make a recommendation to deny. To deny this procedure and move forward. I can't, in good sense, in hindsight, I heard enough people against and who is going to affect their
I just feel like we need some of the answers to the questions that I mentioned. Is this going to mean that you are allowed to just tear properties down? Is it going to, have we looked at studies?
Yes. And
I mean, are we still not a historic?
They're going to affect the historical district also.
But we still have to decide every single property that comes before us. When somebody wants to tear a property down, it comes before us to decide if that's allowed based on the historic guidelines. Just because they want to build a single family house or they want to build 5 townhouses, we still have to decide, are you allowed to tear that property down to just build that townhouse? Let's forget about, I know there's an issue at Sunset Ridge. I know most of you are from Lake Osborne, and that's understandable that you're concerned. I would be concerned too. But I think if this is going to affect the entire city, I just feel like we need more facts to know, what have other cities done? How has this affected them? A lot of the things that are raised, I just don't have the knowledge to make that decision. I agree.
This is going to affect. This is going to affect. You can possibly end up with a townhouse by your house. Yes.
I don't know if that's going to make my property value go up or down. I don't know if that's going to mean that a family in a townhouse is different from a family in a single family house. Yes, you might have a bit more of them. I mean, we're going to have a Gulfstream hotel at some point. There's going to be a lot of more people coming in. You know, that's already been decided.
Madam Chair, and I'm hate to point her out, but we go back a long way. The point that Ms. Mahoney brought up, and she's a former planning and zoning / preservation board chairman, about a combination of properties that she owns is an example where this could take place if it were allowed throughout the city. I don't know how many other properties or parcels are similarly situated in the historic district, but I'm sure there's not just the one that she and her husband used to own. And so the example that she gave was a very good example of what could potentially happen if the ordinance were approved in its fullest definition without a lot of other things attached to it.
But we don't.
We need those other things attached.
Yeah.
We need those,
We-
all
we-
those things attached. We can't just approve something that we don't understand the
We're not
ramifications.
proving anything. We did not.
Well, in that, but in that case,
The people in the gallery,
I kind of
we're
feel
talking
like,
among ourselves. You had your chance to talk. So please. We have to maintain a order. Can we continue the discussion, please?
yeah, well, I mean, I think that, while we can't really foresee the potential implications of what this might do, but I guess to me, when I think of it that way, it makes me feel like possibly maybe this ordinance is the wrong way to go about what it is what the intent is.
Exactly.
Maybe, where we're saying, well, we're gonna do this, where you can go in and do this, but you're not changing the zoning in that area. Maybe if you really if something has to happen, it really does need a zoning change in an area. It's kind of like going around the process in a way, what's being proposed, I feel like.
That's the reason I wanted to
Does
know.
that make any, I don't know. Is that clear?
I didn't understand what you said.
You didn't?
No.
We have zoning districts, right?
Mhm.
But now we're creating a thing that says, well,
We're
you
gonna
could
change
do,
the
you
zone.
could do this in that zoning district, but it doesn't actually comply with that zoning district. So it's sort of like you're kind of going around the process.
So what are you proposing?
I don't have a proposal. I'm just trying to analyze the proposal that's there.
I feel like I don't have enough information to approve or disapprove it.
So when you
Yeah.
don't have enough information, you deny and you move it.
No, no, there's other options.
What I'd like to ask staff is, I'm not comfortable with approving this. I'm wondering if there's a way that we can choose proposal by proposal and say, okay, we'll approve this proposal or not, and not have it affect the entire city. I mean, that's what I'm having the problem with. I don't want to.
Isn't that what the workshop or tabling it would do? I don't know.
Well,
Because we say, okay, well, we're gonna approve this project, like Nadine said, anything that comes before us, we have to approve or not approve. If somebody wanted to tear down part of their property and build an extension, we had to approve that. So, I don't understand exactly if it's essential that we say, okay, we're gonna approve or disapprove the Sunset Drive project and why it has to affect the entire city.
I think we were talking about single family homes. We're about tearing down. Right here now, we're talking about townhomes. There's a difference.
Well, you have before you an ordinance that would allow the possibility of townhomes in a planned development in an SFR district. Up there are 5 bullet points that include more than one option. You can go through at your pleasure or another meeting, what of any of those you're interested in studying more. You could vote up or down. As an example, we are generally okay with this ordinance, but we only want to see it apply to those SFR districts that are located in certain areas of the city, say the CRA. There's not a lot of SFR residential in the CRA, but there is some. That's one boundary that can be defended. As our charter is set up, it makes a distinction between east and west of Dixie. As our comp plan makes a distinction, there's a difference between east of Dixie, Dixie to 95, west to 95. There are things in here about the affordable housing program. You could provide a recommendation if you saw fit on any one or any mutation or permutation of those 5 options and send it to the city commission. That's a lot to tackle in one meeting.
Yeah.
Or you could go the route that Mr. DeVoe said, is recommend denial or something similar and have the commission possibly send it back. That has happened for more study. And you know, what we did with the LDRs, and Ms. Mahoney does remember this, we had a joint meeting at the Beach Club where the city commission, the planning and zoning board, and the preservation board all sat together and went over all the different things, because we wrote the entire city zoning code in 2013. And so there were 17 zoning districts, planned developments, the whole thing. And we were there 4 or 5 hours, I think it was. It was a very long time. And it was a long time ago too. So we got to be very close friends because we had a workshop every month for 2 years before it ever got to the commission. And at the end of it, when we had a draft, there was a collective understanding that, oh, we should all meet together, city commission, planning board, preservation board, to go over this, because it was going to be a humongous dramatic change of the entirety of how the zoning was done in the city. And then we can go into other.
And that's really what we're looking at tonight is in a, well, we've been at this about an hour and a half since we got done with number C. Took about an hour and a half doing what it took you guys months to do, is to change the zoning. Am I understanding that properly? Well, I don't feel comfortable doing that.
Me either, and I feel, it feels cowardice to me to say, yeah, no, we're gonna deny it. Let's let somebody else take care of it.
That's not
Seems
cowardice.
to me like I'm not doing my job.
You could deny it and it could be brought back.
Why?
Yeah.
I said, why?
Then maybe they have a different recommendation.
Well, we were just, the attorney and I just conferred, what you could do, and we'll help you craft it. It could be a recommendation to the city commission to consider this application in a public setting along with the planning and zoning board and them, to get public feedback before it's actually formally heard and read. And that might get at some of the things that Mr. DeVoe is mentioning, address the concerns that both Mr. Riso and Ms. Devlin have, and give you a path. Now, when we take that recommendation to the city commission, it'll be like the recommendation of denial from the planning and zoning board. They could take that recommendation and decide, yes, this is a good idea to have a joint meeting with the 2 advisory boards and themselves to go over this very complicated thing. Or they could accept the recommendation from the planning and zoning board, which is denial, or they come up with their own recommendation and approve it or disapprove it in some fashion. So that's another option versus, you know, I'm trying to give you what's on the table for you.
I thought that was a good suggestion. We could recommend that. We could recommend that. All right. So if we're going to make a recommendation altogether, we could recommend to the city council that they table this, bring it to the public, get public comment to the city commission, and then therefore they could consider the ordinance with the public involvement. That would be appropriate.
Are you suggesting that William said to have a joint meeting between the city commissioners, the planning and zoning, and our board?
That might be the best way to do it.
That
was one suggestion.
That was one suggestion.
That would seem like the most appropriate thing to me.
But hold on. The planning and zoning board already denied it.
But the planning and zoning board made a recommendation.
Well,
to
but
the city commission. Their recommendation to the city commission for the city commission to deny it.
Why would they come back? Why would they come back? Why would they come
Oh,
back?
we could just invite them. If they don't want you, they don't have to.
How can you make a recommendation to get these bullet points reviewed and to have some more information on that? What would be the best option for that? I mean, maybe it should only be allowed in certain areas. Maybe there has to be minimum parcel project sizes, minimum maximum number of townhouse units allowed. There's lots of options here.
Madam Chairman, if that's your interest to go over those points and how those might look, then the suggestion that I made or that Mr. LeBlanc made about having recommendations to the city commission, that you have a joint meeting or some public charrette process to go over them all, would be the avenue. If the board's pleasure is that this is overwhelming and too much, you can recommend, as the planning and zoning board, denial to the city commission.
Does that option provide, I think you mentioned at one point that you would come back to us and present some of the facts, because I feel like,
That is an option as well. You could table this to either a date certain, or just table it and ask for staff to bring more information back to you, which we would have to re-advertise the ordinance at that point, because we wouldn't have the date certain, and try to provide you more information on those bullet points, if not others as well.
Can I bring one thing to mind? The Planning and Zoning Board, that's their district. Now, they voted them down. It was denied. And we vote yes.
we're not voting yes.
wait.
Nobody wants to vote
no,
yes.
no.
Nobody wants to
We
vote
arguing
yes.
the point.
We just feel like we need more information.
Finish. We're arguing the point for something to come into the historical district that we don't have, we don't need at all.
But they've told us what our duties are. That's what our duty is, to hear this.
I understand that. But that problem over there in one could spill over in the historical district. But that's already denied. That's already shot down. Yes. So why can't we just go along? I mean, everybody got to think for themselves. Not what I want. Why don't we deny it? Have them take it back to the commission, and if they with any changes come back, they can bring it back to us. It's simple.
Trying to make this re-verbalize Mr. DeVoe's recommendation if he wants to make it a motion. What I'm hearing him saying is that you do not feel that this change is appropriate for the SFR districts that are in a historic district.
Exactly.
So you can recommend to the city commission that you do not feel that this should be applicable to any historic district. And furthering what he said, you could say, we confirm and support the recommendation of the Planning and Zoning Board to deny it in the rest of the city.
Exactly.
Well,
Thank you.
well, now somebody's got to say it. That's what you want to say. That's what you want to say, Ed. That's what you got to say.
So if you wanted to say, I move what Mr. Waters just said, Jerry wrote it down, that's fine. And then you can get possibly a second, you can vote on it. Or
So we can go home tonight. I move what Mr. Waters said. Can I get a second, please? Can I get a second?
But
I move what Mr. Waters just said. Can we get a second?
She said he could do that.
okay.
Do you understand what he said?
We're waiting for
You want to repeat that?
Could you?
All right, I'll
Could you repeat that?
Wait, you had, there was a motion on the floor
Oh, there was.
originally.
Oh, it died for lack of second. So we have a new one now.
Okay.
So what it would be was that your recommendation to the city commission was that you're recommending denial of this proposed LDR amendment as it's applicable to the historic districts of the city and the SFR zoning that's there. And
Is that different from what is being requested?
No, you have a myriad of choices of what you can
So
recommend.
that's an outright denial.
And then you affirm the recommendation of denial the Planning and Zoning Board gave for the rest of the city. And you send that to the commission.
For the rest of the city.
Yeah. They denied it.
I'm confused on, you're talking about historic district and then the rest of the city.
I was trying to reverbalize what Mr. DeVoe was saying. And what
Okay,
I'm saying is that.
is there a
as a board-
difference?
Yes, in many
Okay.
respects, there is, because you have planning and zoning review in historic districts, but also the historic preservation ordinance. And what I was hearing him say, and he can correct me if I'm wrong, is that his recommendation is that this should not be applicable to the city's historic districts. That could be your recommendation.
And the city historic district, does that include the area that the people are here?
We have 6 local historic districts, all that are east of Dixie Highway.
East of Dixie Highway.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
And then secondarily, what I heard him say is a second part of that motion would be that you affirm and recommend the same recommendation of denial for the rest of the city as was made by the Planning and Zoning
The
Board.
Planning and Zoning District, yes.
And then it's all in the world of the city commission, who could then shoot it back to you for more consideration, have a charrette, have a workshop, have a special meeting, have all kinds of things. to include more public comment if they so desire.
Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Can we vote?
Can we get a vote then?
Aye. Yeah.
Call a vote?
Aye.
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 If I say nay, what does that give us? Does that give us? We already have three.
She said nay.
Nay.
I'll just vote for it. Doesn't really, fine.
Did you vote yay? Yeah. Oh, you did vote yay. Oh, okay.
What else we have?
It's all up to them.
What else we have?
All right, so we do have to keep moving through our agenda.
Oh, we have more
Thank you all
agenda.
so much. So,